Thank you, everybody. At 7:06 p.m., I will convene the regular September 22nd, 2021 meeting of the West Windsor Planning Board. This is to advise that notice of the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda of the subject meeting was prominently posted in a public place reserved for such or similar announcements, transmitted to the Times of Trenton, the Princeton Packet, and the West Windsor and Plainsboro News, and filed with the Township Clerk on September 15th, 2021, all on September 15th, 2021. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Joseph. Ms. Bari. Mr. Schichtel. Mr. Pankove.
Yes.
Mr. Hoberman.
Here.
Ms. Jeevers.
Here.
Mr. Begg. Ms. Applegate. Mayor Marate.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cart.
Here.
Chairman O'Brien.
Yes. We are being videotaped for YouTube at this evening's meeting, and I believe the mayor has an acknowledgement to offer.
Yeah, I just want to thank the school district for helping us to do that. And they've been kind enough to lend us employee to do this. So we will be doing this for this application. And because of COVID, we have an interest in this application. We have decided to do it for this application. The meeting will be live on our YouTube channel permanently as long as the world exists or something happens. So you can watch it anytime you want now.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank everybody who's wearing a mask for doing so. As my colleagues know, I very much dislike wearing a mask, but our health officer has implored us to watch out for each other and try and reduce any spread of COVID in the community. And so I thank you again. And if you have a mask with you and would please put it on, we would appreciate that. Okay, our first order of business, our minutes. We have two sets of minutes, August 4th and August 11th of this year. They are presented as a consent agenda. Does any member of the board wish to pull either of these minutes from the consent agenda?
Could we pull the 4th?
Council has asked to pull the minutes of August 4th. Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 11th as circulated.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Who made the motion, please? Mr. Pankove.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second on for the August 11th, correct, Gene?
Yes.
Correct. Well, second on that one.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the August 11th meeting as distributed. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor who are in attendance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Anyone need to abstain from voting on those minutes? Motion is approved, therefore the minutes of August 11th are approved. Jerry, what's the question on the August 4th minutes?
Just one minor thing. Under Chairman's comments correspondence, the third line, keeps should be keep. You take out the S.
Delete the S and keeps on the third
And
line.
keeps, right.
You've been spending a lot of time reading minutes, huh? Any other changes by any member of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the August 4th, 2021 minutes as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Begg. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the August 4th meeting, subject to one change. Anybody have any questions or comments? All those in favor who were in attendance at that meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Is anybody abstaining from voting on this motion?
I abstain. I was not present at the meeting.
Thank you, Curtis. Motion is approved. Therefore, the minutes of the August 4th meeting are approved with one minor change. In my haste to get to the minutes, I bypassed public comments. Is there anybody from the members of the public who wishes to make a comment? Excuse me, I'll call you. I'd just like to finish my request. Who wants to make a comment about anything that's not on the agenda of tonight's meeting? Sir?
Hi, my name is John Hinsdale. I live at 38 Quaker Road here in West Windsor. And my comments refer to the conduct of the meeting. First of all, I'd like to very much thank you for all wearing masks now, because you didn't last time, but now I can see that we're learning something, and I'm really glad to see everybody out here attending the meeting, wearing a mask, and I think that's great. Nonetheless, I think that all these not precautions, but it's accommodations to do the YouTube and all of that speak of themselves as far as recognizing that there are some people who simply, despite all the masks and precautions and the Delta variant, just don't feel safe attending the meeting in person. However, it's unfortunate that those citizens attending as much as they can on YouTube are relegated to the level of second-class citizens because they have absolutely no voice in this meeting, because the meeting doesn't have a Zoom link where they could speak over the internet, nor was there a facility made like they do at the council meetings where they could submit comments to be read into the record at the meeting in their absence. I just wanted to let you know that I feel that those citizens have been relegated to a second-class status solely because they didn't feel safe coming to attend the meeting due to the COVID. But let me say, I appreciate all the YouTube and definitely that you're wearing the masks. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else wish to make a comment about an item that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting? You know the drill, right?
Yeah, but thanks for reminding me. Terza Warman.
Can you speak into the microphone,
Sure.
please?
Terza Warman, 5 Stonely Drive.
Chairman?
Thank you.
Chairman, can you have her repeat that, please?
Sure.
I can't hear her name and address, please.
It-
You need to
it's-
talk
yeah,
better
sorry.
into the mic. Terza.
Terza Warman, that's Tirza, Warman, Wahraman. And I live at 5 Stonely Drive. So
Thank you.
I want to commend the township for putting this on YouTube tonight. I think that's a really good step, and I commend you. But I want to also complain that YouTube is one way, and so how are people able to comment? So I think the notice and comment piece is critical to planning board proceedings.
Terza, please just speak into the mic. I appreciate you
Yes,
trying to
okay.
address everybody. but
Sorry, yeah.
our Recording
Okay.
secretary has a heck of a time.
Poor baby, sorry about that. Yeah, okay, so my point was that I'm pleased with the YouTube piece, but I think notice and comment is critical to this proceeding. And so there isn't a comment piece for those who are listening tonight on YouTube. And I want to go on the record to say I think that is a deficiency. I did reach out to Mr. Mueller, and we weren't able to connect, but I will amplify those concerns about the comment piece not being fully available to those who cannot attend in person. And then I just want to say I was at the last time's proceeding, and I have concerns with the loss of green space, the loss of vegetation, the increase in impervious cover,
Excuse me, that is not
part of
a
the,
non-agenda item. We are going to be hearing the application, and you will have an opportunity to
Okay.
comment. all
that
right?
will be at a later
I
point.
apologize for cutting you off.
No, it's all good. So there'll be an opportunity at a later point.
Yes,
Okay, thank you so much.
you're
Mis-
welcome.
Mr. Chairman? Oh, if anyone has questions, I guess for the attorney, they would have to go through you, not calling directly to our attorney, correct? I mean, otherwise, everyone in the township could call our attorney here.
Well,
I just want to know what the procedure is.
if, in this case, the member of the public is also a member of a West Windsor agency. We haven't set guidelines, Linda, about being able to call the attorney. I'm sure if he gets more than a couple of calls, he's just not going to take the calls. I mean, people who want to question or know something about the proceedings of the planning board, or the zoning board for that matter, are encouraged to call Mr. Surtees, our land use manager, who's in the township building and can be reached by the main number, 799-2400. Yes, sir.
I got the challenge my name. You give me one for Washington.
Michael, excuse me. How do you spell your last name? C-R-A. Michelle? Michelle.
If you go to some neighbors of mine, they couldn't be here because of the call. And they suggested at my job to make a suggestion, maybe other things, and that would be held on a independent one. They would like to see to the question, to get an answer, etc. And that's the reason I'm talking. Maybe you would consider to move this on a Zoom or any other promotional. You can be invited. We participate or to many committees to attend. And in the last month, they were all online. And I can see the attendance was very large. Still online. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? All right. G. Oh, please.
Yes, Zach Newell, 144 Fisher Place. If I could just make a suggestion, in terms of,
Is it Wheel as the
WEALE.
W?
If I could just make a suggestion in terms of, if somebody asks a question, if whoever is answering it can just repeat the question into the microphone so that everybody else can hear. I'm in the back row and I can barely hear people who are right in front of me. So that's the only comment.
We'll make an honest attempt.
And I mean, the other thing is, the camera's facing that way, so I guess we want everybody to address the board as opposed to the people.
The custom is to address the.
My birthday's online.
Anybody else? All right, we're going to move to a proposed resolution of memorialization for an application that was heard back in June. This pertains to application PB 20-09 for HSC West Windsor LLC. Members of the board should have a copy of that resolution. Jerry, do you have an overview that you want to provide?
Yeah, just quickly, this was for, we're in the final, major site plan approval for 2 phases of the 3 phases development, which is immediately adjacent to the very shopping center on Route 1. Phase 1 includes a practice supply company, and behind that is the Wood Springs Hotel. Preliminary approval for a pad site basically closest to Route 1, that is expected to be built and contaminated by an urgent care facility and that have nothing there. There were a number of waivers that have to be granted, and that's set forth on pages 3 and 4 of the resolution. No variances. There are a number of issues that we have to address, but the significant one, I think, is dealt with access to the site from Route 1. There's a lot of concern expressed about the angle of the exit from the site because it's actually hard. We really have to, it's very hard to solve the traffic coming down Route 1 to go northbound. because of the, so the present condition that says our traffic engineer is not empowered to meet with the DOT and the applicant altogether, so set something up. To see if something could be done to reduce that, and what is ultimately DOT's goal. So that's kind of brief, but what they do is a number of conditions that we'll lay out, putting in the resolution.
Thank you, Jerry. I'd like to inform the members of the board concerning the egress situation and the requirement on item 20 for meeting with NJDOT. But I checked with our traffic engineer recently, and he indicated that nothing had been scheduled. Is that still the case?
Yes, I spoke, Mr. Chairman, I spoke with their attorney, and he said that he was attempting to set up a meeting that has been unsuccessful.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the board have any questions about this resolution? There were a few changes, but you should have the latest copy. Linda?
I just wanted to double check something on page 8, under number 20. It mentions seek delineation by NJDOT in the GOR area. Is that what it's officially called? Floor?
Yes, and
Floor, okay.
yes, the space between the two drives.
Okay.
With the striping. Okay. Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the board on this resolution memorialization?
I move that the West Windsor Township Planning Board approve memorialization of PB 20-09 HSC West Windsor LLC for preliminary and final site plan.
For phase one, preliminary for phase two.
And preliminary for phase 2, correct?
Thank you, Linda. Been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution memorialization this evening for the action taken by the board on June 9th. Any further discussion on the motion? Cindy, please call the roll of the members who are present who voted in favor of that application on June 9th.
Mr. Hoberman?
Yes.
Ms. Jeevers? Yes. Mayor Marante?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Clark?
Yes.
Chairman O'Brien?
Yes. With all favorable votes, the motion is approved to adopt this resolution, and it will be put into the record. Our next order of business is the main one on the agenda for tonight. It is application PB 20-15 for Princeton Junction Train Station redevelopment. Before we go any further, again, I want to reiterate that we are being videoed tonight for access on YouTube. And I appreciate the comments that were made earlier by members of the public. And it is Chair's practice that if we do receive written input in the way of a comment or a question, we will direct that to the appropriate individual or group. So for those who are watching on YouTube, we will entertain any comments or questions that you'd like to submit after tonight's meeting. I did not expect that we will get far enough into the proceedings tonight to have any member of the public address the board or the applicant's witnesses. So it will be timely for me to provide any input. That input should go to Mr. Surtees, who is at the Township building, 271 Clarksville Road. Also, thanks to the cooperation of the applicant, the transcription of the record proceedings that are being taken by the stenographer in front of the room will be made available to Mr. Surtees, who will post them on the West Windsor website. So that gives members of the public an opportunity not only to hear from the YouTube what's going on tonight, but also to be able to read verbatim, which this very conscientious woman is taking in the front of the room, what happens. So the way to access the item on our website is a little bit involved, but I'll read it slowly, and hopefully you'll be able to have practice between now and next week when it's likely to be posted. The transcript can be located at www.westwindsornj.org. Once at the website, click the banner at the top of the page titled Boards Committees. Under that heading, Boards Committees, on the left side of the page, click the tab for Planning Board. Once you are on that page, the tab Planning Agendas and Minutes, which can be located on the upper left side of the page. Once on that page, scroll down to September 22, located directly next to the date, you will find a link titled Information Page. Click the Information Page link, which will take you to a page where the transcript will be listed. And if anybody has difficulty following the instructions to find the transcript and wants to see it, please call Mr. Surtees at the Municipal Building, 799-2400. And again, we'll thank the applicant for the cooperation in making this available. So at this point, I will turn this over to First question is whether or not the board has jurisdiction. And Jerry, for those who were here a few weeks ago, this is going to be a little bit of a rehash. Can you explain what's been happening?
Yes, I will state on the record, proof of publication and service are in order. The board has jurisdiction. The board originally started to hear this application on August 25 and then carried it, I think, to September 8, which was the day that the meeting was canceled because of the warnings with respect to the tornado. After that date, staff discovered that a portion of the site plan includes 3 acres or so on the SRI site, which necessitated that everybody within 200 feet of the SRI mother parcel be noticed, and they were not noticed. I thought this was a serious enough defect in the notice that the original hearing was not proper, and that it should be voided. And they should renotice, including everybody within 200 feet, both in West Windsor and Plainsboro of the SRI site, as well as everybody they had previously noticed, which is what they have done. Because of that, we're starting all over. So everything all the testimony, all the exhibits should be, from the hearing on the 25th, should be disregarded, and we'll go through it again. I just wanted to mention one or two other things. We spent a fair amount of time at the last session about the question of some of the bedrooms did not have windows. I did some research, prepared a 1-page memo, which indicated that I didn't say this in the memo, but the Uniform Construction Code does not require windows or skylights in bedrooms. There is, however, separately a Uniform Housing Code, which does, and it was adopted many, many years ago, several decades ago, by DCA on instruction from the legislature with legislation. That doesn't automatically. DCA. Department of Community Affairs.
Thank you.
The state housing code doesn't automatically apply to municipalities. a municipality has to adopt it, which West Windsor did many years ago. The state housing code specifically provides that bedrooms have to have either a window or a skylight. It empowered the health officer to enforce that provision. It's not within the jurisdiction of this board to address it. And it will be addressed, although we could certainly note in the resolution that this that there was an issue that was discussed briefly tonight, but the board did not review it because it's not within board's jurisdiction, and it will be handled administratively. I know AI, their attorney, Mr. Fernaro, had submitted a letter challenging the jurisdiction of the board because he claimed part of the site plan application was on AI property. Mr. Hoff did a response. He said it was not, and the board voted that it did have jurisdiction in spite of the objection by AI. If Mr. Fernaro is here and he wants to resubmit that material, he's certainly welcome to do so, and whatever argument he and Mr. Hoff want to make, but I don't see him here. But I just wanted to mention that as well. So that's where we are at this point.
So adequate notice was provided now, and we do have jurisdiction.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Again, for those who are watching on YouTube, in case you, for some reason, need to drop off before the end of tonight's meeting, which will be no later than 10 p.m., we will be reconvening this hearing on Wednesday, October 6th, and likely continuing to October 13th. It all depends upon how long testimony takes and how many questions and comments we get from members of the public. So just wanted to give you a heads up. There will be no meeting next Wednesday. It's the 5th Wednesday of the month, and the planning board customarily does not hold meetings on that night, and members of the staff and or the board make other plans. So it's difficult to suddenly jump in and say we're going to have a meeting, because as you can see, we only have 7 members out of our potential 11 here this evening. All right, with
And if
one
I may,
last thing,
Mr.
happy
Chair-
autumn.
If I may, for members of the public, there will not be further notice of this hearing as it's continued from date to date. It's just being, the only notice is a notice that the chair just gave that there's going to be, it will be continued on the 6th on the assumption that it's not finished tonight. On the 6th, we'll continue it. If it's not finished then, we will give another verbal notice through the chair that it's been carried to the 13th.
Finally, Mr. Huff, we can turn it over to you to discuss the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Richard Hoff, a law firm of Biscayne Hoff. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Avalon Bay Communities. We are both the applicant and the redeveloper for the designated parcel, which the chairman indicated is within the Princeton Junction redevelopment area. We are here tonight for preliminary and final major subdivision and preliminary and final major site plan. I don't want to get into scheduling at this point. However, as I've raised to Mr. Muller on prior occasions, and I will make a pitch at the end of our conclusion, we understand the board schedule. Depending on how far we get, I just want to reserve our right to request special meetings. Whether they're granted or not is a different question, but we may want to request special meetings. There are rights that the applicant has pursuant to a redevelopment agreement. But again, I don't want to belabor that. We can deal with scheduling at the conclusion of the meeting. I want to get to the testimony here tonight. I'd like to get my witnesses sworn. I think that's how we started last time. We will start that way again. For the record, Mr. Muller, you're correct. Obviously, we have the hearing anew, but the presentation remains the same. So we're going to go through a PowerPoint. I provided copies of that in a bound form. We're going to pre-mark that as Exhibit A1 collectively. It's going to be the same show that you saw last time. So with that sort of procedural note, I'd like to get started and would ask my witnesses if they could stand and get sworn in.
Please do so, and after you are sworn or affirmed, we'll ask you to state your name, spell your last name, and tell us your affiliation. Jerry?
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So I just want to affirm, if we can go around, if you could state your full name, and as the chair indicated, spell your last name.
Jeremy?
I'll start. So, Jeremy Lang, Lange. I'm here on behalf of Colliers Engineering and Design and providing the civil engineering testimony.
Thomas S. Carman, Carman, with Malone, Bauer and Carman Associates, for landscape architects.
Wait, Jim.
James F. Culpepper, I'm with architect with C+TC Design Studio, on the design of the
And I am William Cox. I am also with C+TC Design Studio, and I am the vice president.
And I am Stuart Johnson. I'm the principal of Pinellasco Architects and Planners. We do architecture with the townhomes and the condo buildings. I'm registered architect.
So you're here in place of Mr. Minow, as I understand it, right? Welcome.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mr. Ken O'Brien will need to get sworn in. He had to step out, but when it's his time, Jerry, we get him sworn and qualified.
Is Mr. Rashid going to be here?
No, that is one other point. We agreed to defer any traffic testimony until the hearing on October 6th. That's why Mr. Fernaro is not here tonight. We will be not presenting any traffic testimony this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
And with that, if I could, I'd like to start with Mr. Lang and get into the civil testimony.
And Jeremy, while you're coming up, I'd like to just graciously ask all who do provide testimony tonight to make good, clear references, page references to the PowerPoint presentation, because those who are watching it on YouTube have access to this document at the West Windsor website. Thank you.
All the exhibits are on the website for those who are watching via YouTube.
Do you have hard copies tonight or no, for us?
No.
What was the question?
Isn't that your hard copy on the bottom?
Oh, that one? Okay. All right, I'll use the one.
Good evening, Jeremy Lang with Colliers Engineering and Design. So,
Mr. Lang, why don't you start with your qualifications, please?
certainly. So I'm a civil engineer and a planner. I have been in that field for approximately 27 years. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been a professional engineer since 1999, a planner since 2000. I'm also a certified municipal engineer, a certified floodplain manager, and I've been designated as an engineering expert witness by the ACEC. I've testified in over 65 municipalities throughout the state. I'm a member of the New Jersey Society of Professional Engineers, as well as the Ocean County Society of Professional Engineers. I've also been accepted as an engineering and planning expert in the tax court of the state of New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer Mr. Lang is qualified to testify in the field of civil engineering.
Does anybody in the board have any problem with that? So be it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Avalon Bay Community, Inc. There's also two co-redevelopers, Pulte Homes and Atria Senior Living. Between the three, that makes the entirety of the application, which I will present to you this evening. First, I'm going to call your attention to PowerPoint slide number 2. This is an aerial exhibit of the overall site and surrounding area. The site is located in the middle of this PowerPoint slide. It's outlined in yellow. That consists of Block 6, Lots 8, 54, 55.01, and 76. The site is bounded in part by Washington Road and Station Road, which is also known as Station Drive on Google Earth. It is adjacent to the New Jersey Transit parking lot for the Princeton Junction train station. Formal access to the New Jersey Transit lot is pending for a pedestrian walkway and a road connection, as well as through a service cul-de-sac, but it is not needed for the project. Those are just amenities on the project, which I will explain later. As was alluded to earlier, approximately 3 acres will be acquired in some form from the adjacent parcel known as the SRI parcel, and that's Block 5, Lot 8.05.
Jeremy, excuse me a moment, I'm sorry. I forgot to offer you the opportunity. If you'd like to rotate your chairs so you're facing either of the screens, please feel free to do so. We don't want anybody with crooked necks or anything like that. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. That was a good point. And just for the public's information, the PowerPoint pointer I'll be using will show up on both screens, so you won't miss anything looking at either screen. So to pick up on the testimony with the SRI piece, a portion of that acquired parcel will be granted to the county for purposes of new right-of-way for Washington Road, and a portion will belong to a common parcel for Basin F, as in Frank. Under the existing conditions, the property is approximately 24.44 acres. After the subdivision and with Basin F parcel, it'll be approximately 25.56 acres. It is in the redevelopment plan for Princeton Junction, the RP1 district, as was previously noted. So now I'm going to go over a little bit more about the location and the settings. So to do that, I'm going to go to, or excuse me, I meant to stay on PowerPoint page 2. So this is a transit-orientated development. It's very important to understand that. It is literally in walking distance to the Princeton Junction train station, which services both the Northeast Corridor rail line as well as the Dinky line to Princeton. It is on Washington Road, which is a county road, Route 571, and it is a county road up to the ramp to the bridge that goes over the railroad. It is a township road south of that ramp. Currently, the DOT actually has jurisdiction over the bridge itself, the overpass from the intersection with Washington Road to Princeton Heights Town Road, which is also a portion of County Route 571, and that is NJDOT Route 64. So that is all on the, you'll see here with my pointer in red, that is all this area on the left side. This is Washington under the county DOT jurisdiction as you come over the rail line, and then it comes back to county jurisdiction. So in terms of existing site conditions, I'm going to go to PowerPoint page number 3. This is a very similar view to the prior, except now we're zoomed in much tighter, where the existing site consumes most of the exhibit. You'll see both from looking at the exhibit and if you've been by the site, it's currently developed with an underutilized office park. So there is a substantial amount of development, both in terms of buildings and parking areas and other ancillary spaces. It is bounded by the New Jersey Transit parking lot and rail station, as well as the Dinky line on the Northeast Corridor line. And that's all on this exhibit would all be on the left and kind of lower portion of the exhibit. Again, to the right, you have Washington Road, and then you've got the overpass that brings you over the Northeast Corridor rail line. The site is in the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission Review Zone B, as in boy. A portion of the site is located in the flood hazard area. The flood hazard area is located along the northerly portion of the site in the area I'm indicating here. The verified flood hazard area elevation is 64.1, and that was developed using the Method 1 approach, which relies on an NJDEP stream study. Interesting to note that elevation is actually based on the backwater from the Millstone River, which is off to the right. It's just off the page here, but that has a very large watershed of over 78 square miles, as opposed to the Little Bear Brook, which the site is actually contributory to, that only has a drainage area of approximately 2.4 square miles. The flood hazard area extends approximately 150 feet into the site at its maximum point, which is approximately Road A under the proposed conditions, and I'll highlight that on the following slide in a moment. That flood hazard area has been verified by the NJDEP, and the required flood hazard area permits have been issued, and they were received on May 12th, 2021. There are no freshwater wetlands on the site. There is a small area of transition area in the northwest corner, approximately where I'm indicating there, but it's only transition area coming from an off-site wetland. It's a 50-foot intermediate resource value buffer that extends onto the site. A NJDEP letter of interpretation was issued for that, confirming that on February 20th of 2020. And the chair in the prior meeting, so I'll just answer this question, had asked whether or not that had been filed at the county clerk. The answer is yes. The deed notice that's required for the LOI was filed on April 16th of 2020. So now I've moved to PowerPoint page number 4. This is now similar to what PowerPoint slide number 2 had, except now the proposed development has been overlaid. So you can see the layout and the extent of the development relative to its surrounding area. I'll go through now in a lot more detail each section of this development and how it interrelates with the surrounding border and also the content that's within that developed area. So I'm going to begin doing that with PowerPoint page number 5. What's represented here is a total of 868 units. In addition to that, and those units are residential units, there is non-residential space of approximately 21,211 square feet, which includes a promenade retail area and some Atria senior living non-residential space. Within those residential units, there are 535 Avalon Bay apartment units for rent, which are distributed in 2 buildings, which we call the East and the West building. Again, I will show you some more detail, but just quickly, the West building is here on the lower left side, and then down on the lower right is the East building, which also has a parking garage in the middle and then some additional building area. Then in the upper right portion of the site, there is a Pulte Homes neighborhood with 150 townhome units, which is a mix of 32 traditional townhomes and 118 stacked townhomes. There is also a condominium building right in the middle of the project. In some prior lives, that was going to be a proposed hotel for those of you that have been following this over the number of years it's been going on. Mostly related to the pandemic. That did not happen, so that is now a condominium building, which will be constructed by Pulte, and that will contain 48 condominium units over an at-grade parking area. So essentially be a parking garage underneath it, but it will be at ground level, not subsurface. Last but certainly not least, in the upper left-hand corner, we have the Atria Senior Living facility, which will have 135 assisted living units, which will include 25 memory care units. Within that, all those units I just described, there are included 149 affordable units located throughout the project. A little more specifically, there are 100 units in the Avalon Bay buildings, 15 in the townhomes, 7 in the condominiums, and 27 beds in 22 units in the assisted living facility. All of the uses that I have described to you this evening are all permitted uses. No use variances are required. As was noted, this is also a subdivision application, mostly for the functionality of the project. It'll actually be subdivided into 14 parcels to separate the various users, common areas, and roadways. So for the rest of the evening, I'm going to focus on various aspects of the site development. The architects for each of those 3 main development areas are also here, so they'll focus on the building. So my testimony will not delve too much into the building contents, but more the site contents and how the buildings interact with the site. So I'm going to begin on PowerPoint page number 6. and describe the promenade and retail area. You'll see on PowerPoint page number 6 here in the pink or magenta color, that is the area we're talking about where the retail and the promenade is located on the site. On PowerPoint page number 7, we have a blow up now. This is from that same rendering that I've been showing you all along. We're just way blown in now, so we can see a lot of the detail that's going on. What you're seeing is on the top of the screen, the Avalon West building. You're seeing a portion of that in a kind of mirror fashion. On the bottom of the screen, you're seeing port of the Avalon East building. And then right in the middle is the Promenade Area, which is essentially a boulevard type roadway that has a circular end, so that there's no dead end area in it. So I'll just kind of walk you through that real quick. I'm going to start from the south end, which on this exhibit is on the left side where I'm indicating. So in this area, we have an amphitheater style seating area. There's some grade differential between the New Jersey Transit parking lot and this promenade area, so we're taking advantage of that. It slopes down as you come toward the promenade. So we've got a sidewalk that kind of winds back and forth. It creates these seating opportunities and also provides handicap accessible access between the two different ground levels. So we're really making the most of that space, both functionally and operationally. Immediately to the right of that is an area we call the South Plaza, and that is located on the end of what would be the Boulevard median. I'll explain this a little bit more in a minute, but it is possible to close off all or port of this promenade area to vehicular traffic, in which case then the vehicular portions can also become part of the public and event space. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this. So for instance, that South Plaza could actually more than double in size by simply closing off the roadway portion of it for a large event. After the South Plaza, moving right, there is an open air pavilion that is roofed with a transition to an unroofed area immediately to the right of that. We call that the Shade Tree Knoll. And that's got it's a garden area that's got tables throughout it. To the right of that, there is some additional plaza space that can either act as a plaza or can actually act as a cut through. So if you want to only close part of the promenade area, you can close it at this point and then actually go through the median to complete the loop. So that gives you some functionality. If you have a medium-sized event, you don't want to close the entire promenade, but you need more space. That is available. Immediately to the right of that, we have a deck jet fountain area. So this is where fountains of water are coming up through the ground. It's an area that both is aesthetic and also an area that's suitable for children to play in. In a similar vein, immediately to the right of that, we've got a synthetic turf panel area. The synthetic turf is because we anticipate this being a high-use area. Synthetic turf is not like it used to be decades ago. It's a much more long-lasting material now. It has excellent drainage, so even immediately after a rainfall, it's immediately usable. It's not going to wear. It's not going to turn into mud. So it's always going to be ready for the intended purpose, because we anticipate this being a high-traffic area between just daily use for children and then event use as things are programmed. Then finally, to the right of that, we have a North Plaza area and there's also supporting pedestrian crossings of Road B, which essentially leads you off toward the Pulte part of this community, which is off to the right of the screen. It is a flexible design. A typical day, you would have 360-degree access. You would essentially come in on what we're calling Road D on the top of the page, circulate around, and then be able to come back out. There's parking throughout this area. The idea is that there is retail, or I shouldn't say retail, non-residential space on either side of this promenade area. So this was open to the public. It's not some kind of restricted area. The idea is that this would service both community members as well as members of the commuting or transit-orientated public that are using the train station. So if they want to run over, grab a cup of coffee or whatever it is that winds up occupying those spaces, they would be able to do so. Like I already mentioned, it can be cut in half or it can be closed off in its entirety, and you simply stay on Road B and the whole area can become event space. So it scales very nicely for small events, which could be a farmer's market, something like that, or large events, which could be some kind of concert series or something like that.
Can I ask you a question on that? Will you be promoting to the greater community when you have, say, a band or something, different things, events, whatever's going on?
Yes, I'm sure
Is it,
Linda.
I'm hearing that, but.
Linda, excuse me, could you get closer to the microphone
I'm
so
sorry.
members here
Sorry.
can hear the question? Thank you.
No, this is the board at this point, okay. Is it going to be open to the greater community, this whole area? When you have events, let's say you have a band, right, middle of summer, some kind of band comes in. Are you going to promote that to the whole community? How would you do that if so? Or is this primarily just for the people living there?
No, this is definitely public space. So not only is the promenade public space and the non-residential uses on either side, but Road B is actually a through road that'll be open to the public. Road A, in a similar fashion, will also be open to the public. So, these are all public access areas. There's no gates, there's no restrictions. We welcome, and in fact, for these areas to thrive, it's going to be important that people from beyond the community use these facilities. We think that will naturally occur because we are right next to the train station. So there is a reason for people to come here. It's a little bit different. It's not like we're on a large, multi-lane state highway where people are going to see a sign and kind of pull in. That's not that kind of use. You're going to have to be here to kind of see it or know it's there, word of mouth. But we think the train station is going to drive a lot of traffic beyond the residents. So we should get, some pretty good traffic here. And all the events and all would be totally open to the public.
And where would the public park?
If you don't mind, I have a whole parking
Okay, that's
presentation,
okay.
so I will address that, though.
Address that later.
So just to finish this off, there are street lights, street trees, bike racks, benches, the seat walls, as I described. The landscape architect will go into more detail of each of those elements at a later point in testimony. In terms of refuse and recycling, it's going to be managed internally with the residential uses. There are two different areas. The eastern retail will be managed in the southern portion of the Avalon Bay East building near a dead-end roadway, which maybe I'll just switch slides. So I've just now switched to slide number 8, so I can just show these areas. So on the Avalon West side, right off of the cul-de-sac here, next to the Avalon Bay compactors, that's where that retail will be. And then kind of mirror opposite on the east side, there's it's under this purple color, but there's a road here that's got a K-turn area. That's a strictly utility area. And there's a location there for refuse and recycling to service that east side. So with that, and staying on PowerPoint slide 8 for a second, I'm now going to go into the Avalon Bay portion of the community. That's what's shown in the purple here, or with the number 2. That's the east and west. So to the right side is the east area. You'll notice that it is larger than its companion area to the west. Those two areas in totality will have a total of 535 Avalon Bay units, which are distributed in 2 buildings that'll be 5 to 6 stories in height. I'm going to switch to slide number 9. So now this is back to that same rendering we've been referencing. We're just zoomed in so we can see the Avalon Bay locations. The primary parking for both the east and west are parking garages. In Avalon East, there's a parking garage essentially in the middle of the structure that's got access both from Road B and from Station Road. And then in a similar fashion, Avalon West has a parking lot located just to the north of the building, and that has access to and from Road B. There'll be a variety of outdoor amenities. Again, the landscape architect will describe these in a lot more detail, but they include things like courtyards, parklets, a pool, things like that. But Tom Carmen, the landscape architect, will provide a lot more detail. There are a number of loading zones proposed, so I'll just run through those. On the east side, there are 2. One is located off of Station Road. It's right above the Word Road. I'm pointing to an exhibit. There's a dog park right in that area. It is proximate to some elevators within the building. The architect will provide a little more information about that. But that would be one of the areas that could be used for move-ins and other types of loading and deliveries. Also serving the east side, to the left or west of the Road B parking garage entrance, there's another area for loading. It's about 85 feet long, and that would serve for both loading as well as package deliveries such as FedEx, UPS, that sort of thing. And then finally, there's another area for the west side, a 70-foot long loading zone located along Road B, and that's between the Promenade Area and the entrance to the Avalon West parking garage. In terms of refuse and recycling, again, will be managed internally. The Avalon East has two different refuse locations. One is to the left of and adjacent to the north entrance to the parking garage east. So that is right here, off of Road B. And then the other is down here, immediately to the right of the access into the parking garage off of Station Road. And both have compactor-driven dumpsters for refuse, and that's all internally fed. The architect will provide some additional testimony of how it's fed from inside the building, but from the building system, it comes down into these fully enclosed units, which are roll-off type units. Once they become full, they're simply picked up and exchanged for an empty container. All the truck turning, et cetera, has been checked so that this will function appropriately for those trucks to access those areas. Avalon West has a very similar location. It's off the cul-de-sac. So it's in between essentially the end here of the Avalon West building and this service road cul-de-sac. This whole cul-de-sac and road are purely service. This is not for public access. So we'll just serve loading, delivery, and refuse, fire access, emergency service access, that sort of thing. So with that, I'm going to go to the Pulte portion of this community. And I'll be switching now to PowerPoint page number 10. And the Pulte portion of the community is in this light green color with the number 3. And then I'm going to, similar to what we've been doing, I'm going to zoom in now on that area on the rendering, and that is PowerPoint page number 11. So in this area, we've got a mix of different types of townhomes. Again, 150 townhomes. They would be 3 stories, and it's a mix of traditional townhomes, 32 of them, and stacked townhomes, 118 of them. And those are located here throughout the development. And then in the lower left port, which is really in the center of the site overall, but on slide 11, it's the lower left. That's where this 48-unit condominium building is. That's a 5-story structure, which is 4 stories of residential over at-grade parking. The at-grade parking is under the condo, so it will be weather protected and will serve the condominium building. I will talk about parking in a lot more detail a little bit later. Amenities here include walking paths, bike racks, access to the promenade, etc. Here in terms of refuse and recycling, the residents in the townhomes and stacked townhomes will keep bins in their garage and wheel them out on collection day. Very typical residential setup. Residents in the co-units that do not have garages will use designated bins that are located in trash corrals on the side and rear of units, and those are shown on the plans. Trash in the 48-unit condominium building will be managed internally and then wheeled out in containers that will be picked up on trash day, and that'll be a managed thing by the homeowners association. So last but not least, moving on to the Atria Senior Living, I'm going to PowerPoint slide 12. Atria is shown here in the yellow color, and then number 4, you'll see it's on the northwest portion of the site. It fronts on both Road A and Road B. There's a total of 135 assisted living units in that building, and that includes 25 memory care units. The building will be fully sprinklered. Billy will get deliveries because it's a residential use and it's considered so under the RSIS, but obviously it's a little bit of a different use, so they do get some more deliveries, institutional type deliveries. So they are accessing the service road cul-de-sac for that. They have a loading area in the this southwest corner of the Atria building. And they anticipate about 26 deliveries per week. But many of these deliveries are coming on smaller trucks and vans. This is not tractor trailer type stuff. This is smaller things, doing community supplies and food supplies, linens, things like that.
Jeremy, you made reference to something RSIS that stands for.
The Residential Site Improvement Standards, it's NJAC 5:21. And in the terms of residential development, that usurps local zoning for any of the items that are covered by it. So, and similar to where the loading is concerned, or excuse me, taking place, there are bins for refuse and recycling that will be picked up by private hauler in this area as well. And there are a variety of amenities, just like the other parts of the development. The landscape architect will expand on that, but they include a number of outdoor spaces for the benefit of those residents. And then I already hit the refuse and recycling. All right, so now I'm going to go to PowerPoint slide number 14. Oh, I forgot to go to number 13 first. So here's the rendering, again, zoomed in similar to what we talked about before. You'll see we've got Road B coming, which is really a through road from Road A to Washington Road. We've got this little half moon drop-off area that accesses the front door to the senior living to facilitate drop-offs, things like that. You can see some of the outdoor spaces in the grounds, kind of in this nook of the building along Road A. And then you can see these kind of back of the house areas that we discussed where we've got the loading and refuse and recycling off of our service drive cul-de-sac. So now moving to PowerPoint slide 14, I just want to talk a little bit about the road improvements. I'm not going to talk about this too much. There is going to be separate traffic engineering testimony, which will be a subsequent hearing that will describe this in a lot more detail. But just to go over how it interacts with the rest of the site, I will address that. That area is located on the right side of Exhibit 14, which is the east side of the project. It's indicated here in orange with the number 5 on it. And this is really showing a relocation and realignment of Washington Road, which is shown on slide number 15 that I just went to. You'll see here that Washington Road, which currently runs to the left of what's labeled as Basin F, it's essentially the left side of Basin F, that's current present day Washington Road, that's going to be bumped out and essentially lined up with the ramp that goes up to the bridge going over the northeast corridor. So that will, instead of being that turn, you've got either a sharp right or sharp left you got to make now to go over the bridge. Now it'll be a straight on movement. You will come into a traffic circle that will essentially direct traffic coming from really Station Drive or Road B. You'll have traffic coming over the bridge and then coming from Washington Road, from that direction. There's also a planned future access as a fourth leg to this circle for future development that's not part of this application. Again, the traffic engineer will address all the layout and operational aspects of it. There is a dedicated basin here in the lower left. It's in this beige color. That services the road improvements. And then this Basin F is servicing the part of the Pulte community. So I want to talk about site circulation overall. So I'm going to go now to PowerPoint slide number 16. So we've got 2 access points from Realign Washington Road, and they are one Road A, and that is proposed to go all the way through to the New Jersey Transit parking lot. That is also known by some as the Vaughn Drive extension. It is possible, it's not part of this application, but at some future date, this is set up to be an extension of Vaughn Drive and would connect all the way through to the west here. So it was designed with that in mind, although again, not part of this. Similarly, it is shown with a connection to the New Jersey Transit parking lot. We're currently working with New Jersey Transit to secure those rights. That's a nice to have, not a need to have. We could also terminate this at our service drive and leave it at that if for some reason New Jersey Transit was not interested. But obviously, this is a large residential development, which being transit orientated as it is, should be a large chunk of ridership to use the transit facility. So it makes total sense for them to integrate as much as possible. The second point is from Road B, which is really going right through the middle of the site. It connects Road A down to the other portion of our Washington Road frontage. So that gives you full circulation between Road A and Road B and Washington Road. You have full circulation all around and to and from the site. All of the roads, whether it's roads A and B, as I just described, or interior roads, Road C that connects Road A to B, this is more of an internal roadway, really servicing the Pulte Homes neighborhood is essentially the spine of that part of this overall community. And from there are a bunch of side driveways with access to the individual units and surface parking areas. Similarly, I already talked about it, but in the Promenade area, that's Road D that circulates around off of Road B. Again, that's not a through traffic, that really is servicing the non-residential space in the Promenade. All four of these roads are in conformance with the RSIS. Road A has a 33-foot cartway and an 8-foot multi-use concrete path on one side. That is located on the side, the south side of Road A. Meant to be for both pedestrians and bikes. It's considered a minor collector, medium to high intensity with no parking, and those dimensions are fully in conformance with the RSIS. Road B is a very similar classification, also a minor collector, high intensity. The only real difference is this has parking on both sides where Road A did not have any parking. So this has a 22-foot cartway, a 7-foot minimum parking lane on both sides, and a 5-foot minimum sidewalk on both sides. Road C, also considered a minor collector under the RSIS, high intensity, and this has both side parking. So again, 22-foot cartway, 7-foot parking lane on both sides, and a 5-foot sidewalk on both sides. Finally, Road D, which is a one-way circulation. So you're going essentially counterclockwise as you look at it here on the exhibit. That's considered a minor collector, high intensity, with parking on both sides. It's a 20-foot cartway, 7-foot parking lane on both sides, and a 10-foot wide minimum sidewalk. And again, as far as the Washington Road realignment and how that interacts with everything, the traffic engineer will provide more information.
And these four roads will be maintained by the developer of the community?
No.
No.
That's something that, to that point, that's something that we need to work out with council as to which roads are to remain private and which would be public.
Regardless, all four roads meet the residential site improvement standards, so they're all suitable to be public roads. But it would be a council action to determine which roads are public versus private, but they're all suitable and meet the standards.
Well, I would think that the developer could pay for that, not the residents, the taxpayers, since this is really all part of your development.
But
the developer is building all the roadways.
Well, I understand that, but there's always maintenance, there's snow removal.
Linda, that's not going to be determined at this hearing. Questions will be entertained later for the public. But as a courtesy, I will repeat what the applicant's attorney said, that this is going to be addressed at the council because it's a council that has the authority to accept roadways for township responsibility.
Or not.
Okay, picking up now, we're going to switch gears to stormwater. We've got a stormwater exhibit on PowerPoint page number 17. If you look at the plans, you'll see the site generally slopes northwest toward Little Bear Brook, which is up off the sheet to the top of the sheet. See, northwest is in this, oops, there it is, in that direction. We've got two distinct points of analysis in that area, and both meet the stormwater management. The one is, the point of area number one is an existing storm sewer. It's an 18-inch RCP discharging off-site to the northwest toward Little Bear Brook. The second consists of the Washington Road stormwater conveyance system, which also eventually goes to Little Bear Brook. There's an existing collection system and a detention basin on site. A portion of the existing basin will be converted to a bioretention basin under the proposed conditions, and that's shown in the yellow here on the left side of the exhibit. The project is under the jurisdiction of the stormwater rules in effect on March 1st, 2021. The project has been reviewed by the NJDEP for stormwater and did receive, among other approvals, a stormwater approval from the DEP on May 12th of 2021. The on-site stormwater management will be provided by a variety of different types of BMPs. So as I just mentioned, the first one here is on the left. This yellow area is a bioretention basin. Then to the right side, there's an extended detention basin, also in yellow. That's called Basin F. Then throughout the site, there are 10 underground detention basins. These are all shown in the pink, or yeah, it's really, I guess, a pink color. So you just see them throughout the site. In terms of water quality, there are, in terms of those detention systems, 4 of them are storm trap units. 2 of them are in Road A, and 2 are under the parking garages. So you can see here on Road A, up by Washington Road, and then also on Road A over by the transit facility. Then there are similar units underneath the Avalon West and Avalon East parking garages, and those are for stormwater detention. And then there are 6 high-density polyethylene basins, and those promote infiltration. They are on the Promenade and the Pulte Homes area. So you've got the Promenade here in pink, and then throughout the Pulte Homes neighborhood, you can see some of those pink areas. And then finally, we've got 2 rain gardens on either side of the condominium building, and those are in this yellow color to the right and left of the condominium building.
So these underground detention basins, the red, they're in the red, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So.
That's Mr. Hoberman.
Thank you. I should have identified myself. Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair. In terms of the design of something like those or capacity of something like those, could they have withstood the most recent storms we had with Ida?
Yes. In fact, both the Henri and Ida storms were actually in this location specifically.
Right. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Very similar. Henri was about 4 1/4 inches of rain, and Ida was about 5 inches of rain at this location. That correlates to, there's more that goes into what storm return period is, but you could say roughly a 10-year return period for those storms. These are designed for a 100-year return period, which means a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. Whereas the storm that actually occurred here locally, at least in terms of rainfall, was about a 10-year event. So well under the 100-year event. So the answer is yes. These systems would have easily handled actually both Henri and Ida.
So your testimony would be that we're actually improving the stormwater management because of all these new, basins and different things that, that the way that you're engineering this as opposed to the way things are. Because there's a lot of impervious coverage. People in town are very worried because Washington Road floods, and they certainly don't want to see this project increasing flooding or adding more water to an already difficult situation when there's severe storms.
And that's obviously a very logical and understandable concern. Certainly something we took into account. The township has, of course, been aware of these issues. In fact, they engaged 2 different professionals, SWM Consulting and Princeton Hydro, to do a study or did some different studies on behalf of the town. So they looked at that. One of the things they concluded was that the existing stormwater management system in these areas are undersized. So just by virtue of modernizing the stormwater system, now keep in mind, this is roughly 25 acres of a much larger drainage area. So there's only so much we can do within these 25 acres. But certainly within these 25 acres, we are radically improving the stormwater management system from what is there today. There are multiple criteria that have to be met under the stormwater rules, but one of them is a series of reductions. So there's existing peak flow rates. So a storm like Ida or Henri comes, there's an existing peak flow rates that leave the site. And that really drives flooding in storm sewers and other conveyance type structures. And those studies that I just referenced that the township had engaged indicated that it is that conveyance type of thing that causes a lot of the chronic flooding. So that, this more often flooding is really conveyance related. So by bringing those peak rates well down, and when I say well down, what that means is at least a 50% reduction in the 2-year storm, 75% reduction in the 10-year storm, and 80, or really 20%, but 80% of the existing 100-year storm. So you're getting a 20 or 25 or 50% reduction from the peak flow rates that exist today. That's going to really help with that chronic flooding. Now, in terms of overall regional flooding, Washington Road will absolutely still flood. The drainage area to Washington Road is only about 2.4 square miles, but that's very misleading. That's the drainage area to Little Bear Brook. What's actually driving the flooding here is not Little Bear Brook, it's the Millstone River. The Millstone River has a drainage area over 78 square miles. It's an absolutely enormous drainage area. And when you look at, even though Ida was arguably worse for New Jersey holistically, when you look at the contributory drainage area to the Millstone River in isolation, Henri was actually a little bit worse for the overall drainage area to the Millstone River. Because east of here, there was more rain in Henri, where in Ida, the rain was more north and west. There was a kind of swath coming out of Pennsylvania. It really hit the Raritan River extremely hard in Ida, where Henri was concentrated a little bit further south and east.
And do the basins feed into any specific areas?
Yes, this is a holistic storm sewer system. So, we have a decentralized system in that we're dealing with stormwater all over the site. There's not one large basin just in one corner of the site. You can see, looking at the color map, that's why I did it this way, that they're spread throughout the site. They are all interconnected, and they go to one of those 2 discharge points. So either in the top left, they go to that 18-inch
Can you use a pointer, Jeremy, please?
So they either go off here to the top left to an existing 18-inch pipe that heads to Little Bear Brook, or they go here in the top right to Washington Road and go through that storm sewer system also to Little Bear Brook. And then they all flow to the right of the sheet to the northeast. And there's a confluence. It's off what this map shows, but there's a confluence between Little Bear Brook and the Millstone River at that location, which is where everything ultimately goes.
You're saying they drain into the Little Bear Brook?
Yes, that's where we don't control the land all the way to the brook. There is intervening structures in both cases, but yes, that is where the stormwater ultimately goes.
You're saying that will not create any more flooding problems? It's not going to increase flooding problems the way this is designed?
Yes, because we're going to reduce that peak flow rate. Another thing to understand here is that there's timing matters in stormwater too. So the response time of this development is much quicker than the response of the Millstone River. And that comes out of the fact that the Millstone River, because that whole section of the watershed is relatively flat. It's extremely large, very long. So it takes a while. And in fact, your consultants estimated it would be a 12 to 18-hour delay for Millstone River to peak in this area. So what we want to do is cut back the rate of water leaving the site, but at the same time, get rid of the water ahead of that peak coming through. And that's exactly what we've achieved. If you look at the timings when the on-site stormwater management, we've retarded that peak, but we also evacuate the peak of the water out of this area before the Millstone River peaks. Now, the flooding will still happen. The Millstone River is enormous, and that will be flooding Washington Road in large events. That will continue to happen. But we will not be exacerbating that, both because of the reduction factors and the offset in timing.
Just in layman's term, you said Ida was 5 inches and it would have handled it. How much rain can it handle? Instead of 5 inches, 10 inches, 15 inches?
It's around, I got to look up the exact number. It's about 9 inches of rain is the 100-year storm. And I got to check for this exact area. I just can't remember, but it's roughly 9 inches of rain.
We also should consider that the flooding that you've mentioned also can affect all the way over to Alexander Road. So it's more of a regional thing than just Washington Road alone.
It is. I'm only focusing on Washington Road because we don't contribute water to Alexander.
No, I know, but I'm saying
you're
the bigger picture of where this affects in our township.
Absolutely. And again, what's happening, when the Millstone River floods, it's actually sending water up the little bit, going backwards. Right. And that's really what's right. The big flooding that you see, there's nuisance flooding. You get a heavy rain, you get some nuisance flooding. When you get the large flooding, like you saw at Ida and Henri, that's coming from the Millstone River. That volume is coming from the Millstone. So just a couple other quick things to point out. It's not colored on this map, but I did briefly mention it before. There is an infiltration basin. It's kind of crescent shaped or triangular shaped, whatever you want to characterize, on the right side of the exhibit. That's servicing the new road improvements. There is some, net, small net gain in overall impervious coverage there. So that's why we have that infiltration basin to offset that. Speaking of offsetting, this blue basin roughly in the middle of the Road A frontage is actually not a stormwater basin. That is a flood storage basin. We did have a small amount of net fill in the floodplain, so that basin offsets that so that we don't have any net fill. So the floodplain has the same volume, the existing conditions versus the proposed. And again, with the size of these drainage areas, it really doesn't matter, frankly. It wouldn't actually affect it if we didn't have it, but we do have it, and we can meet the standards for net fill. In a similar mode, we also meet the water quality requirements. We have 50% and 80% MTD, which are manufactured treatment devices. We've got bioretention, extended detention, infiltration. All these things work together to meet the DEP stormwater standards in terms of water quality. And in a similar vein, we also meet the groundwater recharge requirements via the bioretention, infiltration basin, and the perforated high-density polyethylene basins, and those two rain gardens that I mentioned on either side of the condominium building. When you add all that up, we have more groundwater recharge than is required.
And the DEP has to approve these plans too?
They do, and they have. So the DEP permits we currently have already proactive, definitively approved these plans.
That was the May 21st.
Correct. Yeah, there's two sets, just to be clear on that, there's two sets of flood hazard area verifications and individual permits. One set is for the development itself, the residential and non-residential uses. The other set is for the roadway improvements. But both permits have been issued, and both include improving the stormwater design for both the roadway improvements and the actual development. So sticking with water, but switching now to domestic water, we are in the New Jersey American Water Service area. The water demand is approximately 121,900 gallons per day. To service that, there are water mains being extended from existing 12-inch main on Washington Road with 3 different connection points, which will then be looped through the development. Those are extending along roads A and B, and to Road D by extending the main along Station Road. Hydrants, both public and private, will be provided, and the locations have been coordinated with Chief Lynch. For the Pulte portion, the water main will be private, so a meter and backflow preventer hot box will be provided west of the condominium building. A Hydroflow Test was performed in January of 2020, and it shows a flow rate of 4,459 gallons per minute at 20 psi, which is adequate for fire protection. In terms of sanitary sewer, sewer generation rate is estimated approximately at 181,500 gallons per day. Credit will be taken for existing flows from the site based on the square footage of the office buildings, and the net will be calculated. To service that flow, an 8-inch PVC gravity system is proposed throughout the development, and that connects to an existing 24-inch interceptor in the existing roadbed of Washington Road at 3 different locations. I will note that that the utilities that are on Washington Road will remain along Basin F for the most part, even though the roadway itself is being relocated off the northeast there. The slopes of those mains are appropriate at 0.4 to 1%. We're providing 2 grease traps for the non-residential uses at the Promenade. And a TWA application is to be filed upon endorsement by the Township and the Stony Brook Sewerage Authority. So earlier I had mentioned parking, and
Jeremy, excuse me.
Yep.
Madam Stenographer, are you okay? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Good call to check. So now I've moved on to parking. I'm on PowerPoint page number 18. I apologize if this is an eye test. It's very difficult to get all this information on a slide. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the highlights so that everybody can kind of understand what's going on. First, in terms of the total required, and this is for the entire development, there's a requirement of on-site parking of 1,228 stalls. We are proposing 1,289. So we are over the minimum required number of parking stalls. In terms of how those break down, we've got 807 stalls for the Avalon Bay portion, 69 for the condominium building, 330 for the townhomes, 81 for the assisted living, 2 car share service stalls, and then the non-residential uses, which actually on the ordinance only require 22, but they will have available to them 144 out of that total parking that I described at 1289. And that's a concept called shared parking, because obviously those uses, non-residential uses, are going to peak during the day, where residential parking obviously peaks overnight. And there's a lot of studies that have been done over decades now on how those things interact, and this will easily work very well with the shared parking. We are not in any way counting on it, but as you've seen on a number of the slides, there's a very large parking area around 2 sides of us on the New Jersey Transit parking lot, so there's obviously a plethora of parking there as well. And that parking for the public for these non-residential areas is located in 3 different locations. So let me just go to slide 19 here. So this is PowerPoint slide number 19. So in terms of the non-residential, you've got parking along Road B, you've got parking along Road D, and then you've got parking within the easterly Avalon parking garage. So there's 3 different opportunities for the public to park on the site. And then, of course, off-site, there's the New Jersey Transit parking. And again, we certainly envision that this, and frankly probably need this non-residential space to be not only frequented by the community, but also for members of the general public. And the next largest, set of people, in addition to the community, would, I think, be pretty obvious that it would be the New Jersey Transit commuters that are using the Princeton Junction train station. They would avail themselves of either the non-residential uses, whatever they ultimately are, and or the special events that would be programmed here throughout the year.
For the public parking spaces, is there any limit, like you would prohibit overnight parking, or you have to get out by 11 o'clock?
Yeah, we would definitely prohibit that. Whether it needs to be worked out, and this may be something that's just worked out in real life, whether it's just signage, whether it's eventually you could put parking meters on Road B, for instance, if you had to. You can use, in the garage, there's a variety of technologies you can use with the tickets and so forth. So they can scale that control to make sure that stalls aren't used, that people don't just park and leave the car there. I mean, you see that in some places. Cars are kind of abandoned in a parking spot, for lack of a better term. So there are many ways that can be dealt with.
Well, some of that, I don't know, Jerry, if any of that would require an ordinance or not, like, prohibiting, let's say, overnight parking or some of these.
Well, on a private site, I think it's the property owner that would.
I would agree with that.
govern-
The issue would be, like, for instance, if Road B, the governing body would make Road B a public road, then parking meters would then become public parking meters, like any other municipal thing. So that would be for instance, in the garages, those are definitely going to be private. I would think Road D is probably private, if I had to guess. So the only one I think there's any doubt would be on Road B. And like I said, there's plenty of municipal, whether it's a sign ordinance or, as you go all the way to parking meters.
How do you regulate the commuter parking? Somebody want to park on the public parking. How do you regulate that? How do you stop that?
And that's what we're talking about. If that were to become a problem, if somebody's trying to get free parking or somehow usurp New Jersey Transit's thing, we may have to put meters in or something beyond signage. I don't think that's been fully worked out yet, and it might be better just to see how it goes, address the problem areas. We can speculate all we want as we sit here, but it's hard until the development's really in use and we kind of get the dynamics. But these things are challenges in urban areas throughout the state, throughout the country. There are many solutions to that. So, I've given you a few of them now, but it can certainly be dealt with.
Right.
That was Mr. Baig that asked that question, B-A-I-G.
So just to touch on EV parking stalls for electric vehicles, there are 86 of them located in the east and west Avalon parking garages. There are 50 in the east garage, 36 in the west garage. Pulte will also be offering EV charging to each townhome garage owner and also to the condominium units in the underground parking. So they'll have, at the time of purchase, they'll have the option to have charging equipment or wiring for charging equipment installed.
Jeremy, do those 86 spots, would they satisfy the model ordinance that New Jersey has put in place for following the legislation that was approved?
I'm going to defer to the architects because I didn't design the garages, and I'd rather them kind of walk through. They have a lot more information on the interior of the garages.
That's fine.
So Jeremy, in the east parking garage, I do note that there is shared parking, which is residential overnight and retail during the day. Is that correct? I thought you just said
Yes.
that garages were for residents only.
No, the Avalon East is shared parking.
Okay.
The Avalon West is only services Atria and Avalon West. So that, other than visitors for Atria, so in that sense it's public, but that garage is really not meant for the general public, but the east garage, as well as the on-street parking, is all meant for the general public. And again, that totals 144 stalls when you add all that together.
Okay, I was just following up maybe on what Annis was just sharing. I just had this general impression that you'd probably want to keep the garage parking for residents or the Atria development. That, in order to dissuade, any type of commuter parking, like what Mr. Begg was saying. So that's why I'm wondering, is it really a wise move to have a shared parking in the garage, like the east garage? What's the wisdom there?
Several answers to that. It's absolutely wise. First of all, we want to make sure we have plenty of opportunity for these non-residential spaces. We want them to exceed. We don't want them to be blighted. So we want people to be able to come that don't live in the community, whether it's because they saw it from commuting here, word of mouth in town, whatever it is. We want them to come. We want them to easily find a parking space. Providing garage spaces provides sheltered parking. So for those residents or patrons that may not feel comfortable going in the rain, snow, whatever, it's a better experience. The garage is elevator service, so it certainly makes handicap accessibility impaired patrons have a much easier time to access the site. So there's absolutely wisdom in doing it. Avalon has a lot of development, not only in New Jersey, but throughout the United States. They are very experienced in managing parking lots and really do this all the time. So even actually just down the road in Princeton, the old hospital site, that's an example of that where they are managing that right now, very close to here. So very, well trodden ground here, and Avalon has the experience to manage this.
Are the parking garages, are those free or you pay for them? Michael Carp.
It's not clear yet what that will be. Again, it'll come down to operationally what is necessary to make things work. I'm sure Avalon will develop that program and figure that out. But they want the stalls used. They want these lease space to be successful so that people will actually lease them. Sitting vacant is not helping anybody. So it is in Avalon's interest and the community's interest for these spaces to be vibrant and fully utilized. So whatever is necessary, whatever kind of balance has to be struck to make that happen, that's exactly what we'll do.
Well, on rainy days, free parking in a garage, a lot of commuters are going to be parking there. I can tell you that.
I have one more question. Like you said before, the promenade, either side of the road to be closed for the current events or whatever. So you lose public parking in that area.
Correct. But again, this is why it's so important to understand that we were required of 22, we've got 144. So even if we close the entirety of Road D, we're still well over the parking requirement. And again, this would be then some kind of a community event. We would anticipate the New Jersey Transit lot to be in use. But even without that, frankly, there's enough parking in the community, to still be several times over the parking requirement. Again, these are things that are going to work out. You see this done in a lot of transit-oriented communities. It's not a new concept. It works very successfully. All right, so I'm going to just wrap up then on one more slide here. Bike and pedestrian circulation. This is PowerPoint slide number 20. As I mentioned, that there are 5-foot sidewalks throughout the development as a minimum, as required by the redevelopment ordinance. They're shown in the blue colors here throughout the community. There's also a 6-foot sidewalk where it's adjacent to parking, consistent with the RSIS and the redevelopment ordinance. We've got the bike or multi-path use path along Road A. That's in this red color on the south side of Road A. We've got visitor and resident bike parking located throughout the development. And you can see here in the various colors, there's both bike parking for the public as well as bike storage for the residents in a sheltered manner, whether that's in the parking garages or under the condo building or accommodations that are made in the Pulte units. And then, like I said, the public bike racks throughout the community. So a very bike and pedestrian friendly community, as you can see by the distribution of all the facilities throughout the site. In terms of the ordinance, just to kind of wrap up now, it is a fully conforming application. There is one waiver from a site perspective, which I'll just quickly touch on, and that waiver is from ordinance section 200-29.m as in Mary, for providing 4-inch single white striping for parking spaces where double striped spaces with 18-inch center-to-center lines are required. It's my opinion, as both a professional engineer and a professional planner, that the single stripe meets the ordinance intent and that it is dividing the parking stalls and guiding cars where to park. I think it's much more residential in character to have the single stripe stalls, typically where you see what we call hairpin, that 18-inch kind of double stripe. You see that in things like a Costco or a supermarket, or you see that sometimes in a high turnover area like a convenience store. And it makes sense there because either you have high turnover, so you're trying to encourage people who are parking quickly to park straight, or an area where you've got shopping carts and you're trying to make sure the cars are spaced enough apart that the shopping carts can move around and aren't impacting the vehicles. None of that is the case in a development like this. So I think it's more important to, because you don't have the high turnover parking, you don't have shopping carts, to keep the character of the neighborhood much more consistent with residential, with the single stripe. And it's just not practical, in my opinion, to do the hairpin hairpin striping in this type of application. It would really not be favorable for the overall character of the neighborhood. So just to kind of summarize a few things in terms of current approvals. There is the Freshwater Wetlands letter of interpretation. There are the flood hazard area individual permits and verifications. We have a Mercer County site plan and subdivision that was conditionally approved on August 24th of this year. And then in terms of pending to be filed applications, we've got the Mercer County Soil Conservation District, which was filed this spring. We will be filing to the Stony Brook Regional Sewerage Authority once we get further along here with the Township. We need to file for an NJDEP Treatment Works approval after that Sewerage Authority approval. We will be filing with New Jersey American. We've had a pre-application meeting with them, but we'll formally be filing with them in the near future. We have filed in February of this year with the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission. Of note, the commission does not act on applications until after this board does. They will not formally act until there's a local approval, but they will entertain applications. So we're taking advantage of that, and we are in regular dialogue with the commission with regard to compliance with their rules. We will also need a request for authorization for stormwater discharge from construction activity under the state general permit. And finally, we'll need an NJDOT street intersection permit for the realignment of Washington Road that I described earlier. With that concludes my direct testimony on these topics. So, Mr. Hoff, I will turn it back to you.
As regards person to ask, electrical vehicle charging station, we have any, are proposing in this parking area?
We do. I did just testify to that earlier. We've got 86 electrical vehicle charging stations in the 2 parking garages. And then also the Pulte Homes development will be offering that as part of a sales option to all their buyers.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Just one, you touched on it briefly. I just want the record to be clear. You've mentioned the design waiver, but from the zoning standards, the provisions of the RP1, height, setbacks, coverages, all of the typical zoning standards, this application complies with each and every one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as Mr. Lang indicated, nothing more affirmative. Obviously, he will be here for further questions as we get to the review letters and obviously questions from the public. So
Fine. Jerry, I should have done this before we heard Mr. Lang's testimony, but I want to say that he and I are acquainted professionally, and I don't see it as a conflict of interest, but I just wanted to get your viewpoint.
No, there's no conflict.
Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move on to Mr. Johnson, who's going to testify to the Pulte architecture. We're going to go a little bit out of order here, but I'll orient the board members of the public with where we are in the slide presentation. But before we get to that, Mr. Johnson, you've been sworn, but the same drill. Let's go through your educational and professional background, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So good evening again. My name is Stuart Johnson. I'm a principal at Minnewaska Architects and Planners. I have a bachelor's of architecture from Syracuse University. I have over 15 years of professional experience. I am a registered architect with a current New Jersey license. I've appeared before approximately 25 municipalities across the state and qualified as an expert in architecture. I've also appeared before the Superior Court of Bourbon County and qualified as an expert of architecture. Minnow and Wasco Architects, we are a 95-person architecture firm based in Lambertville, New Jersey, with another office in Newark. We are the architect of record for the Pulte Homes component of the application being considered by this board this evening.
And you've been testified in front, I'm sorry if I missed it, testified in front of boards in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I have numerous boards across the state.
You said 25, right?
Approximately 25 municipalities I've qualified as an expert in architecture, yes.
Any board member object to this witness being considered expert? So be
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson, so we can get everybody on the same page, could you advance this to slide page 28, please?
Sure.
So this will be your takeoff spot. You're going to provide the testimony and walk us through the architecture elements of the Pulte portion of the application.
That's correct. Yes, I will.
And when you make reference, just make sure you make reference to the page so that the transcription gets it down.
Sure. So I'm going to begin with page 29, if my eyes don't deceive me. This is a site plan here. It's a key plan that indicates the area with number 3. That's pushade in green. So again, this is the Pulte Homes component of the site. This consists of one 5-story, 48-unit condo building, which is inclusive of 7 affordable units. This is also comprised of 15 3-story townhome buildings, which range in size from 6 to 18 units per building, that are generally located in the northern portion of the overall development site. Specifically, there are 150 townhome units that was previously testified to, which are inclusive of 15 affordable units. I believe the breakdown of the unit mix was provided in the documents that we had submitted.
Mr. Johnson, why don't you advance to slide 30, because that'll, I think, assist where you're referencing.
So slide 30 here is a blow-up. This is an illustrative site plan. It's rendered in color, depicting the landscape, as well as the parking areas. The buildings are pochade in a vanilla color. See if I can use this correctly. Back.
It's the other button, I think.
Back, is there a pointer?
Top button. There you go. Oh.
So I'm not going to use the pointer here because it doesn't seem to be working. But the 5-story, 48-unit condo building is the rectangular building that's located on the bottom left corner of the exhibit here. And again, as noted too, there are 15 3-story townhouse apartment buildings. There are 2 types of, townhouse buildings. There are two different types of townhouse product being designed for the site here, which I will get into in a little bit later. One is what we call a traditional attached townhouse, and the other is a stacked townhome. But the general design of this portion of the site allows that the primary front elevations where the front doors are face the primary roads that are laid out in the site. Those roads being Road A, Road B, and Road C, providing access throughout the site. So essentially, the rear sides of these elevations where the garage doors are located are internal facing or inward facing, which allows for traditional neighborhood design development where we have attractive landscape and architecture that face the primary streets, which increase pedestrian safety and makes for an attractive streetscape experience for pedestrians walking throughout the community as well as driving through these streets. Again, we've designed the townhouse buildings to face primarily roads A, B, and C as noted, and then the other buildings throughout the site generally face green areas that have been designed in other pockets of the site. So with that, I'm going to move on to my next exhibit, which will be sheet 31. And I would like to spend a little bit of time to talk about—
Mr. Johnson, excuse me.
Sure.
Before you go on, you mentioned in the 48-unit condo building, the garage for parking. I note that there are about 24 parking spaces that are, I'll say, front to back.
Sure.
If they were to be used, it can only be by one residential occupant. Is that not correct?
That's correct. So there are approximately 24 structured parking spaces, which are front to back. We call those tandem parking spaces.
Tandem.
They are typically assigned to the same two-bedroom unit within the building. And yes, they would be assigned to the same unit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where would the children play?
I'm going to defer that to our landscape architect who's here, who's going to talk about the overall site design and where some of the open green spaces are throughout the site. Again, I think our engineer had made testimony in regards to the walkability of the site. I think you can see a number of pocket areas here of green that allow for passive play area. And certainly the site is well designed to provide connectivity to the greater park system within the community. But again, I'll defer that to our landscape architect to provide additional testimony in regards to some of the passive open recreation areas of the site.
All right.
Sam, I want to, on this issue, and thank you for bringing it up, Linda. On this issue, I know that when we've done other housing developments, that within the zoning or whatever, there's provision for certain passive recreation areas depending on quantity of housing units or something like that. When we did this zone for this type of mixed-use development, that type of consideration was not given. Is that correct, Sam?
Hi, Sam, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony
Excuse me,
about to
Jerry.
give will be the truth?
Jerry, excuse me. Let's do all of our
Okay.
potential witnesses at the same time.
Yeah. All of the township staff, if you could all
Francis.
stand
Jeff,
and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed. If you could state your full name, just state your full name going around, starting with David.
David Novak, spelled Novak. I am an associate principal with Burgess Associates, spelled Burgis, and we are the Township Planning Consultants.
Jeff Lamoureux, Lamoreaux. I am a traffic engineer with Aurora and Associates, spelled Arora. We are the Township Traffic Engineer.
Francis Guzik, Guz, Zebra, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state. I'm a township engineer. Dan Dobrovolsky, landscape architect for the township. DOB, ROM,
to those who are watching on YouTube, I apologize that we can't show you what our professionals look like at this time, but the camera's in a set position, so maybe you'll get to see them at another hearing.
start opening, I believe this building must be.
Thank you. Dan, can you?
I think you should wait for good testimony from the landscape architect, but my expectation is that this is a unique type of development because of the zone that it's in, that they encourage the development of this area, that they have amenities that they exist for stuff when you should get a testimony, and it's like a house that's built in.
Satisfactory.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to advance the slide to page 31, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time to talk about the 5-story, 48-unit condo building. Sheet exhibit A4 here are the front and side elevations for the proposed condo building. The building has been attractively designed with similar building materials to that which can be found on the two proposed multifamily apartment buildings on site. The exterior building materials consist of quality building materials. The base of the building provides for a cast stone weighted base where the punched openings are at the garage level. We have two different masonry brick veneer colors being used on the upper portion of the building. There's a lighter color and a darker color to provide accent and relief. The facades have been designed to be articulated horizontally and vertically to create relief in the design. There's a varied cornice line, creating interest at the corner elements as well as the center element of the building. The design provides for large windows at the living rooms and bedroom areas. Additional building materials that can be found on this building are two different colors of vertical fiber cement siding panels for variation and accent. We're also providing for dark window sashes, which can be seen at the punched residential windows there to provide contrast with the adjacent building materials. We also have black anodized aluminum railings at the various balconies that are inset in the building. And again, you find that the same quality building materials here and approximate percentage of building materials will be found on all four sides of the building. This building is located centrally in the site, which is really at the head of the promenade between the two different Avalon Bay multifamily apartment buildings. And again, there are 48 units. 41 of those are market rate units, and 7 of those are affordable units.
It appears that each of these units has a balcony on the front side of the building.
Correct. Most of the units do have balconies on the front as well as the rear. When we get to the next elevation, you'll see that. So that allows for outdoor space for fresh air that's desirable more than ever, especially during these times.
Do the affordable units have a balcony?
The affordable units have similar layouts. So some of the affordable units may have balconies
They
in their
may or may
designs.
not, or when you say may, I mean,
So some of the affordable units, I believe, do have balconies, yes, but I'm not sure that, I'm not certain at this moment whether all of the affordable units have a balcony.
And do some of the market rate units not have a balcony?
That's correct. Some of the market rate units may not have balconies.
So there's no favoritism one way or another.
No, I mean, this is a truly inclusionary design. So there are 7 affordable units. It's an inclusionary design. They are spread throughout the building. Walking around this building from the exterior, you would not be able to tell where the affordable units are or the market rate units are. Internal to the building, again, they have the same front door entry at the main entrance of the building, same access to parking, the entrance to the units themselves, again, the same entry. So internal or external to the building, you wouldn't be able to tell where they are. So that's a smart design.
and the size of the affordable units is in compliance with our ordinance.
That's correct. So the size of the units are, the minimum size requirements per unit type are in compliance with the township ordinance. The affordable units, I believe, are for sale in the condo building.
So they're all for sale then?
Right. So this is a for sale. It's not a rental apartment building. It's a for sale. And naturally, they would have to comply with UHAC standards as well as township standards in regards to the pricing associated with them.
Is there any special amenities in the building?
So no, there are no special amenities overall within this building. It's a 48-unit building. Typically, buildings of that size, we don't see large club rooms and fitness centers that would drive up homeowners association fees or condo association fees. Again, there are great amenities, fitness centers within the township and the surrounding area. So that's typical of a condo building of this size. So with that, then I'll advance the slide to sheet 32, which is Exhibit A5. This depicts the rear building elevation as well as the additional side elevation. So again, here you can see the same building materials wrapping around all four sides of the building. The cast stone material providing a weighted base to the building, the two different masonry brick veneer colors and textures, the vertical fiber cement panels, and the same varying roof line and cornice line. The overall building height for this building is approximately 63 feet 4 inches, which again complies with the maximum building height permitted by the ordinance. So with that, if there are no further questions related to the condo building, I would like to advance to a discussion regarding the proposed townhouse product for the site.
I do have one more question.
Sure.
Again, with regard to Exhibit A1 that was provided to the board earlier, when I asked the question about whether there were sufficient electric vehicle charging stations to satisfy the model ordinance that is being proposed by the state, I was asked to talk with the individual building developer. So for the parking areas that's shown, what is the situation for electric vehicle charging stations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So compliant with the new state ordinance and standards, 15% of the structured parking spaces internal to the building will be what are called make-ready electrical vehicle charging spaces.
Well, if I could, Mr. Johnson, just to
Sure.
be clear though, the new model statute is not applicable to this project. This application had been previously deemed complete prior to the enactment of the statute. So while, as Mr. Lang testified, there is, ample EV charging stations throughout the project, I believe the number was 86 at various locations throughout the project, we are not bound by the requirements of that state statute.
But nevertheless, let's
Right.
hear what you
So-
are providing.
So
Yeah, I
with
think
that
you
said-
should, though. I mean,
So with that said, my
people are buying
client-
electric cars.
Right. So with that said, my client Pulte Homes, and it was testified to by our civil engineer, will provide that as an option. So if you are buying a unit within the building, you will have an option for an electrical vehicle charging space internal to the condo building. Similarly, the townhouses will have an option for an electric hookup, and the infrastructure will be sized accordingly so that in time, as technology advances, or more tenant demand arises, that the service sizes, the capacity of the transformers and the service sizes can accommodate that.
Right, and each unit gets at least one space, including the affordable units?
Correct. So each unit gets at least one space internal to the building. The affordable units, I believe, do park exterior of the building. I believe they're surface spaces. But the spaces internal to the building are market rate spaces.
There's no design that you can get the affordable units to be underneath?
I believe they have the option to procure a space internal to the building.
Yeah, but
if
it's
they so
affordable
choose to.
housing units, so.
Right. So the spaces are structured differently price-wise, the covered spaces versus the uncovered spaces. But they are guaranteed a parking space on site adjacent to the building.
Yeah, but it's outside though.
That's correct.
And the electric vehicle charging capability is an extra cost to the residential owner.
It would be correct. And again, it would be metered usage. So, if you had a hybrid vehicle, electric vehicle, you charged overnight versus someone charged for 5 minutes, it would track that. You would have an account, and they would be able to monitor the electric usage. Correct.
Are those outside affordable unit parking spaces, are they designated by a sign?
Correct.
Like as in being reserved, and they
Correct.
own,
Right.
they own them
They
through
would.
a deed, or?
They would. So again, they would be designated. So the designated spaces, they would be numbered and they would be assigned to each respective unit.
They have no facility for the electric vehicle charging because they are outside. They cannot have electric charging for themselves.
Well, I believe that there will be EV charging in the site. So I think there will be the capability for EV charging for some of the surface spaces based on demand.
And since it's metered use, doesn't matter who's using it, the They'll be paying for it anyway. Nobody's going to get something for free.
Correct.
It's- someone else is paying for it.
Correct. So there are third-party companies like ChargePoint is one of the major providers in this market. And again, I expect that the conduit will be put in place, that again, additional EV charging spaces can be added. But I do expect that that technology will be offered to members, to tenants of this building and of this community to provide for EV charging. And typically how that works, you can reserve a time slot ahead of time. And again, you have an account like an Easy Pass account, and it tracks your usage of electric charging.
So, I mean, if you're going to charge for charging, then what's preventing me going and charging there? Anybody can charge there. Doesn't have to live in that building.
No, well, so I'm going to, this is getting outside my area of expertise in regards to actually how that works. But again, it's a third-party company. It's monitored. There are ways to control that.
Yeah, I mean, ChargePoint, I can go and charge anywhere and I just pay by credit card.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, this is all something that the operator, Pulte, is going to have to work out as part of setting up the condo regime to avoid just that very issue. So
So that's better than having, because anybody in West Windsor can go and charge there.
no, exactly.
So that's like having 40 charging stations for the township.
We're not going to have a situation where people can pull up into private residence parking spaces, charge their cars, and just leave. So we will work out the logistics of the electric vehicle charging station.
Are there guest parking spaces underground? I mean, in the condo building, covered?
I'm not sure what you mean by
Are
that
there
question.
guest parking spaces?
Are there visitor parking spaces?
Visitor, yeah.
So typically visitors parking spaces would be surface spaces exterior to the building.
Right.
For security and control, the
They'll be
spaces
marked,
under the building
right,
would be
yeah.
assigned to residents of the building. Okay. So then moving along, next I would like to speak about the proposed townhouse product. So as previously noted, there are two different townhouse products being proposed on site. We have, scale back. So there are 150 townhouses being proposed. There are two different townhouse types. The first of which I'm going to speak to here is the traditional attached townhomes. We have 10 of those buildings on site. And the second that I'll speak to are the stacked townhome buildings, and there are 5 of those on site. So what I have on screen here is Exhibit 33 or page 33, which is called out as sheet A7. These are the exterior elevations for the traditional townhomes. So again, these are straight up townhomes, ground to sky. They're 3 stories. They typically have 2-car garages and 2-car driveways behind them. The exterior elevations have been designed to provide for a contemporary feel and look to blend in with the architectural style and characteristic of the overall community that's being proposed as part of this application. The exterior building materials, again, are quality building materials, so comparable to that of the 2 Avalon Bay multifamily apartment buildings and the 5-story condo building that I just provided testimony to. The buildings are generally masonry brick veneer buildings that provide for cast stone detailing. Some of the cast stone detailing we can see are a wainscot detail at the ground floor of the building, as well as cast stone head details on that facade. Comparable to the condo building, we are providing 2 different vertical fiber cement siding panels for accent and relief on this facade. They can be found on the projected box bay elements on the first 2 floors, and that upper floor of the building with the lighter color to create a base and middle reading to that townhouse. The townhouses have been designed with a varying ridge line. You can also see some of the turn gable detailing at the roof line to provide variety and interest. Nested within those gables, we have a fiber cement board and batten detail or look, which provides for attractive relief.
He's asking, can you make those larger, the pictures,
Sure.
for the screen? So people
Sure,
can
so we'll
see
zoom in.
them
I think
better?
if you go back 1 slide, I think we accidentally advanced
You can see
this
Yeah,
page. So if you
to the
zoom in
top.
on the top, the top image of that page, that's the primary front elevation of a typical traditional townhouse unit. The ground floor entries, the entrance doors are full glass entry doors, which provide for a contemporary look to each unit. We have a standing seam covered roof detail over those entries, which provides for an attractive entry to each respective unit. The same building materials, again, can be generally found on the front and side elevations. If we can zoom out now and go to the bottom elevation, we'll see a typical side elevation where we carry that masonry brick veneer on the first floor, and we transition to some horizontal siding to change the texture of the building. You can see the board and batten detail at the upper gable on the ends of the buildings. And if we advance to the next slide here, we have if we go back one, please.
34, sorry. There you go.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. So the top image here is
Page 34.
Page 34, Exhibit 8.8. This is the typical rear and the other side elevation for the traditional townhouse unit. So here we can see the two-car garage doors that each unit has. The primary living floor, which is where the living, dining, kitchen space and family room space, the great room space, is on the second floor. We have a walkout balcony there, or a walkout deck off of each unit, and then the bedrooms are located on the second floor. And if you pan down to the bottom image, please. If we pan down to the bottom image, then we see the typical side elevation. So again, comparable to the other side elevation that we previously noted.
Is that a door at the bottom?
That is, so that's a door to a mechanical closet off the side of the building.
So that would just be for owners?
For maintenance access,
Maintenance, yeah.
mechanical access for the building. So with that then, if we could zoom out and advance to the next slide, I'm going to spend a little bit of time to talk about the stacked townhouse product, which is a three-story townhouse product, and I think we accidentally advanced the slide again. If you go back one page.
Yeah.
We zoom in on the top image.
This is page 35.
This is page 35, and we're going to look at the typical front elevation for the stacked townhouse product, which is a interlocking floor plan unit. Each unit has a one-car internal garage, and the units are designed with interlocking 3 stories within the building. It's a very successful product, which Pulte Homes has built many, many times, and our office has designed. The ground floor here, so this is the primary front elevation. The exterior building materials are comparable to that of the 3-story traditional townhouse. Again, we have the full glass panel there for the primary front entrances. And the way that these units interlock, they're really 2 interlocking L-shaped, if you looked at them sectionally. But we have 2 front doors. So each unit, and you can see we're providing a dimension there where they range in width between 22 and 26 feet wide. There are typically 2 units per interlocking unit. And one of the ground floors, or the entry door on the left of a typical unit, provides access to the ground floor living area for the first unit, which has space on the first and second floor. So the ground floor area behind the parking garage is the primary kitchen, living, dining space for that unit. And then there's an internal stair that provides access to the second floor for 2 bedrooms facing forward. Then for each respective townhouse grouping, there's a second primary front entrance door that provides for stairs straight to the second floor, which is on the back side of the unit, which is the second unit's living area, which provides for the kitchen, living, dining space. And then similarly, there's an internal stair then from the second floor to the third floor, where that unit has access to the entirety of that third floor for the primary bedrooms of that unit. So again, this is a very successful product that has been designed and approved and built all across the state and the nation. The exterior building materials being proposed, again, are very comparable to the traditional townhouse. Quality building materials providing for a reddish masonry brick veneer at the base of the building. 2 different fiber cement siding panels providing accent and relief. Some horizontal siding being shown here on the projecting elements. Again, a varying ridge line, projecting shed dormers here on the projected elements, and then that nested board and batten look being shown on the turn gable detailing. If we can just slide to the bottom image on this page quickly.
Advance the next slide. Go back.
Sure. So again, so this is our typical side elevation. So carrying those same building materials, the masonry brick veneer being found on the base of the building, the horizontal siding and vertical fiber cement panel being used as accent. If we could advance to the next slide.
This one.
So lastly, sheet 38.
37.
Well, if you could advance one more, I believe we were just on 37. So page 38, which is sheet A15 of the architectural site plan submission set. We have the typical rear building elevation. So here you're seeing the individual garages for the market rate units. You're seeing on the second floor, you're seeing the primary living space for the unit that's located on the second and third floor of the building, and then the bedroom windows for that respective unit. Again, we are carrying that brick along the base of the building and then transitioning to a horizontal siding for the second and third floor. And you can see the contemporary anodized aluminum for those balcony or terrace areas off of the primary living spaces. And lastly, if we slide to the bottom image, the other side elevation, which was very comparable to the other side elevation we saw. So with that, that concludes my architectural testimony in regards to the proposed 48-unit condo building, as well as the two different townhouse product that's being proposed as part of this application.
On the overall layout plan, which was page 433 of the total overview, the townhouse buildings are numbered. Is there any significance to the sequence of numbering?
No, my understanding, those are just, those are numbered for the purposes of the site plan submission. Ultimately, they will be renumbered to comply with the U.S. Postal Service, as well as township ordinance, and certainly meeting with, emergency first responders and how they would like the buildings to be numbered in the site prior to building code or prior to submitting a building permit.
And can you discuss provision for bicycle storage or parking?
Sure. So the townhouse units and the condo building will have the opportunity for bicycle storage internal to that building for residents of the condo building. The townhome units, again, each of the units typically have a parking garage, so there would be the capability for a wall-mounted bicycle storage internal to the for-sale townhouse units.
So an occupant of an upper unit of a stacked townhouse would still have such opportunity in the garage area?
Correct. They would have they would have an internal one-car garage, and you would have the capability for a wall-mounted bicycle. I do the same in my house. I have two bicycles on the wall and need to hang my children's bicycles up too, but each of those units would have that capability, correct?
Thank you.
How many affordable housing units?
Excuse me, gents. Anis, you, and then we'll hear Simon.
The phase construction or you mean, can ask this question, construction to be all in once, or you have phased out certain areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So specifically, I'm providing testimony as it relates to the townhouses. They would naturally be sequenced. So typically, they would be built, in thirds. But I would expect that there would be a phasing plan as part of the building permit to the township, and that would be for further review prior to building permit in regards to how they actually file these. But each respective building will have a separate building permit that gets filed and reviewed with their construction subcode official. But they would be phased naturally.
Okay.
The promenade will be done first, or I'm asking this question, what is general phasing you have? I mean,
Yeah.
like, apart from building different, general phasing that a promenade be done first, or the.
Anis, I don't think this witness can answer an overall general phasing question. Maybe we could get back to Mr. Lang to talk about that, or somebody ought to comment to satisfy your question, but I wouldn't put it on this witness who represents one part of the residential development. Is that okay? Simon?
I'm curious how many affordable housing units are in these stacked and traditional?
So the affordable housing units are not in the stacked traditional townhouse buildings. They are in, I'm sorry, they are not in the traditional townhouse product. They are in the stacked townhouse buildings, and they're located on the ends of some of the buildings spread throughout the site. So again, they are in an attached unit associated with the stacked townhouse product.
Do they have a one-car garage, or do they just have surface?
They do not.
parking?
They have surface parking that is conveniently located adjacent to the front doors of those units.
So on page 38, on the far right, would that be a affordable unit?
Correct. So on the far right of the drawing number 1 on page 38, this is a typical rear elevation of a stacked townhouse building. The far right unit there is a grouping of 3 affordable units.
So there are 3 affordable units in that.
Correct.
N
It's a stacked flat design.
Okay, all right. And how many buildings are there that are stacked again?
There are, I believe there are 5.
5 stacked buildings?
Yes, fine.
That's correct. There are 5 stacked apartment buildings.
And each of them has one unit at the end that is affordable?
Typically, yes.
So, and each of those are 3, so you're saying basically there'd be 15 affordable.
Correct.
Townhouses.
Correct.
Yes, that's what Mr. Lang testified to also, Simon.
Okay, I'm just trying to visualize it with the picture, that's all. Thank you.
In terms of fire prevention, are you building the fire sprinkler system to a full NFPA 13 system? You're upgrading it, right?
So my understanding is that the 5-story condo building will be equipped throughout with an NFPA 13 sprinkler system, yes. The townhouses are a different product. They're technically under the IRC, the International Residential Code, not under the IBC. And the traditional townhomes do not require fire suppression by building code.
In any room?
No, there's effectively a fire barrier between each unit. The interlocking townhouse units will provide for a sprinkler system, but the traditional attached townhouse units will not have a sprinkler system.
And why is that?
The building code doesn't require it, so you have one unit, floor to ground, and you effectively have a 1 hour exterior fire wall on each side of the unit, which creates a fire barrier. That's typical in traditional attached townhouses that are built across the state. It complies with the International Residential Code that governs the NFPA requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Next, we have, Mr. Culpepper will be presenting testimony on the Atria architecture.
Rick, how long do you expect his testimony to take?
Mr. Culpepper will be very quick. From affirmative testimony, I mean, I can't control, obviously, the question.
If I can figure out how to use the controls. So,
Wait.
Jeremy, you said there's a feature button. You just push the top and down hard.
While Jeremy comes up to give you a tutorial on the buttons, why don't you,
So we're good, we're good.
why don't you just, for purposes of record, provide us some of your background?
Yes, my name's Jim Culpepper. I graduated with a Bachelor of Architecture from Georgia Tech in 1978. I got registered in Georgia in 1981. I started my practice in 1987, focused on the hospitality industry. We created, we worked with all the major brands. Hyatt was our main client for years, but Hyatt, Westin, Omni, Marriott, Hilton, you name it. We've done the different brands of hotels. Through that time, we also, because the Hospitality Association worked with a lot of senior living developers and operators. We worked with Hyatt Classic Residence. We've worked with Brookdale. We've worked with Atria, obviously. We've worked with, I have a list here that I remember. Horizon Bay, Longview Senior Housing, and BestTech for some of the major brands we've worked with. They are all upscale senior living facilities. In terms of New Jersey.
Mr. Culpepper,
Hold it.
Mr.
Hold it, Mr.
Culpepper,
Culpepper.
if you could get close to the mic, because.
Yeah, sorry. I'm
people
also
back
operating. Thank you. I will do that. So we've also worked in New Jersey on numerous occasions. The most prominent project we've done is the Heldrick Center at Monument Square in New Brunswick. It's a multi-use facility. You may be familiar with it, but that was opened in 2007. So in terms of relationship with Atria, we worked on the first redevelopment project with them in 2008, and we've had a constant relationship with them since that time. So.
And you did say you're licensed registered
I
architect? in New
am
Jersey?
not, I've applied for licensure here. I've got reciprocity, and we're just waiting on the board to meet. Bill Cox is my partner, is a registered architect in New Jersey, so he's acting as architect of record now, and I'm acting as project lead on the project for now.
So, Mr. Chairman, just so I could, Mr. Culpepper's been, the way it works at their firm, and I'm not going to speak for him, but he's been the lead on this project, so he knows the details of all the architecture we're going to talk about here. To the extent that there's a Jersey-specific question, Mr. Cox is registered in the state of New Jersey. We don't anticipate it, and we anticipate by the time we're actually sealing or signing and sealing drawings, Mr. Culpepper will likewise be registered in the state of New Jersey, given the process takes some time. But we're confident that questions the board are going to have are better directed to Mr. Culpepper, but Mr. Cox is available to the extent that there are any Jersey-specific architectural questions.
And Mr. Cox has been sworn.
He has been.
Does anybody object to our considering this witness an expert? So be it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Culpepper, we're going to go the same way. We're going to.
Thank you. I thought that was it. It just looked for it. So we're on slide 40.
So
Correct.
Jim, position yourself with the mic so you can look at the screen but be heard well
Okay.
by the mic.
Thank
Okay, you don't have to look at any one of us in particular.
Okay, thank you.
We won't be offended.
Okay. Thank you much. Much appreciated. So this is slide 40. The Atria building is up in the upper left corner of this slide is in yellow to number 4. It is the givens we had at the site is it's a liner building for the west parking garage. So it it conceals the garage from road B and from road A. So that was really the given we had when we started the project. As we began to look at the project, we also obviously have to deal with access to the site. It's very important for friends and family to come and have easy access to the building. So we presumed that most of the traffic would come down Washington Road, Road A, turn on Road B. So we have a covered motor area here at the front lobby area. And then there's also an entrance to the west garage underneath our building. So you'll see some of the elevations. So to get to the west garage, you go under the building. And as we mentioned, as was previously discussed, this is actually a private garage shared with Atria and Avalon Bay residents. From an architectural standpoint, we developed a series of goals. One is to continue the street wall of the promenade idea, where this becomes a quasi-urban feel to it. So we've focused on the street wall here as a backdrop for the residential areas, Pulte's building and developing. And you'll see how we've articulated that as we've developed the design. The second idea we had was to focus on the corner of the building, and again, picking up some of the ideas that you see or will see when we get to the testimony for the Avalon Bay, where the corner elements are feature elements in their projects. And then the third idea we've had is that there's a nature preserve up in this area, and we wanted to pull the building back to begin to echo some of the residential scale of Road A, but pull the building back off the street so that this begins to feel a little bit more like a residential element. And there we pick up exterior terrace so that you get some animation to the street, but we also get public areas within the senior living building that focuses on the nature preserve.
Mr. Culpepper, why don't you advance to the next slide? Because I think that point really gets picked up with page 41 there.
Let's see. Whoop.
Wrong way. All right, you're done. That was
This
quick.
was really thank you.
Back to 41.
All
You want
right.
Jeremy to take over? Here, let Jeremy.
Yeah, you might need to do that because I hit the button, it goes the wrong way.
There we go.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is a site plan of the building. So you can see, again, you can see how the motor lobby works. It's a covered motor lobby. Again, there's a drive under to the parking garage. This is our non-residential space here. And we've actually created and set this back to break up the facade so that there's actually a terrace area and trees. And again, the landscape architect will get into that in more detail. But the idea was to keep this pedestrian walkway animated and interesting and support the non-residential space we've got. Again, within the building, all the public areas of the senior living building abut the main active public areas, abut the terrace, which is in this area overlooking Road A and overlooking the nature preserve. And then there's a private garden in the back where the library and the theater are open to it. So it's actually got some, and the fitness is back there. So it's got some outdoor green space, but a much quieter green space. We envision the terrace on Road A is being very active and very busy. And again, it will become the center point of the common areas, outdoor events. So that's really the overall planning of the building. If you can advance the slide.
This is slide 42.
Thank you. So this is slide 41.
No, 42.
Sorry, I really need to get my glasses fixed. So again, just a couple of elements we talked about. And one thing I do want to say is we are very impressed working with Sam Surtees and his team. I want to compliment him on he and his consultants' efforts, staff consultants' efforts. We got very good input, very detailed and very organized and very clear and concise. So we greatly appreciate that overview and commentary on our work.
He's had years of practice, Jim.
I'm sorry?
He's had years of practice. But thank you for your compliment.
I was personally impressed, so I thought I should mention that.
Thank you.
One of the things we've done is we've actually elected to use the drawings we did for the submittal that shows the level of detail and attention to detail we put in it so that we would make sure we conform to the design criteria, which are quite extensive, but we think we've achieved that. So what you have at the top drawing is a rendering or 3D perspective from the corner of Road A and Road B, looking at our corner iconic feature element. The idea there is that it's where the Atria graphics would be. It will be what the residents and guests first see coming to the building. And then immediately behind that is a facade element that kind of captures the motor lobby. And then there's a recess, as I mentioned, at the non-residential space. And then the back element steps out again and celebrates a garage entry. So at the bottom drawing is a dead elevation of Road B, and you can see the corner element. Here you can see this kind of captured element that has flanking towers on either end. This is a front entry to main motor lobby. The lower level of the non-commercial space, non-residential space was residential above, and then the entry to the garage in this area. One of the goals we had was to, even though we're continuing the street wall, was to break up the building, but you can really see in this elevation where it's got a lot of in and outs, it's got a lot of roof elevation changes, and it's got a lot of material changes. So the materials are two colors of brick, a buff brick here and a gray brick. The base is all cast stone to the water table. There's metal panels on these flag elements that are on either end, and then there's also the white elements are cement fiberboard details. And then there's a cap that's stucco, and then the windows are dark windows with dark rails. Again, windows are very gracious. We have a variety of balconies. Not every unit has balconies. So this main facade has balconies where the corner elements are for the two bedrooms. Two bedrooms are in the corner here and here at the end. And then on the courtyard side, on the back, we call it the west wing, which is a nice term. The west wing has balconies on virtually every unit.
And that's slide 43, you can see.
That's correct, slide
Okay.
43. Any questions about this? I was going to jump to the next slide. So this is the courtyard side. Again, this is the iconic corner element. So we're turning the corner now. We're on Road A. This is a perspective looking out toward the nature preserve, which would be kind of what you're looking at. So there's all the green spaces and public common areas are right here with the terrace. And then the tower itself is set back. Part of that was to allow natural light into the terrace. The south is behind that building. This is the north facade of the building. So we get daylight into the terrace most of the time. And then the second floor of this expanded ground floor is where we have our memory care, secure garden, and some public space for the AL residents. And then this jet elevation, you can see the common areas here in the glass area. The blue is all glass. There's an outdoor fireplace. Again, very animated terrace that the landscape architect will get into. And then this back facade is articulated with a series of balconies that focus directly on the nature preserve on this side, and on the back side, look out over the retention basin toward the green areas on the other side of the station.
Next.
Any questions
Slide
about that?
44 talks about materials.
And then
which you
44 is
touched on.
just material. So as I mentioned, we've got two colors of brick, a buff and gray. We've got a cast stone base. We've got metal panels that run on the flag elements of the building, and those kind of repeat throughout the building. Then we've got a series of stucco elements and fiber cement panels on the building with details.
How many memory care units did you say?
We have 25 memory care units. Let me clarify that. That's 25 doors. Some of these are shared, so we end up with 32 residents. And the memory care area is, a secure area, and it's on the second floor.
So they're on the second floor. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there
I'm sorry, excuse
a
me.
nursing station? Is there a nursing station on the second floor?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, you
Yes.
have to have that.
We have each of the areas have their own. They're very secure, but it has its own dining, living, management offices, nursing support areas for the memory care for sure.
And how big is the outdoor area for the memory care?
That's a good question. I'm thinking it's about 3,500 square feet, but I will have to look at that. Hopefully I have it here. It's 2,100 square feet.
Are there going to be like chairs or
Oh, yeah.
tables,
There's yes.
something,
So
an
there
area where they
is
can walk around a little bit?
absolutely, and it will be animated. We usually try to do shaded areas, covered areas, and open areas, walking areas, sitting areas. So it's the idea is it's actually a very rich space, and it feels very good for the residents to go outside. They can get exercise, get sunlight, but in a secure environment.
Right. Because we do have Artist Senior Living in town on Alexander Road. They have very, very nice outdoor area for their residents.
It's essential.
Just so in case you ever needed a reference for something nearby.
I'd have to go look at that to see if there was something we could do. And I don't know that we've developed that terrace in the landscape plan at this point. I know it's been discussed, but I'm not sure we've developed it, but it will be.
Right, because there's very nice walking paths.
Yes, there'll be a series
Yeah,
of walking paths,
exercise.
sitting areas, and there will be, we like to do shade cover. It can either be a trellis or some landscaping tree elements. So there's just a variety of environments that we create in the wandering garden.
Jerry, did you have a question?
Mr. Culpepper, you said there were 25 doors and 32, was that beds? I didn't quite catch what you said.
There are 25 units, meaning 25 doors.
Right.
But some of those units are shared units. So
Right.
they're two bedrooms and they're shared.
Oh,
units.
two bed, okay, thank you.
Right. And we do that virtually every senior living project we do that has memory care.
Thank you.
So the people sharing are unrelated, right? It's not like husband and wife.
I'm sorry.
The people sharing are unrelated to each other. They are not like husband and
That
wife.
is correct. That is correct.
Jim, you didn't show anything in the slides about parking, but in the plans that were submitted to us prior to the meeting, I see on sheets AT 04, 05, 06, and 07, which are levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively,
Right.
you're showing a total of 81 parking spaces. And if I counted correctly, it looks like you're providing 17 of them as electric vehicle charging stations. Am I reading that correctly?
We've focused on the counting and the location, the electric vehicle, that I have to defer to the architect who did the garage. I don't actually know that.
Well, I'm taking the initials EV in each of the numbered spaces.
That would be electric. So if it's there, it's there. That we discussed in some detail the location that they would be weighted toward our garage elevator. The actual whether they're EV or not, that I honestly I just don't know. And a lot of the garage design was handled by the architect that's doing the garage. So we worried about location and access, but beyond that was the limit of our involvement.
Okay.
So
Other
this-
questions for this witness?
Just a quick one. So the assisted living part, if members in the assisted living units wanted to go to the promenade, see a concert, or, go to the retail, they'll be able to safely walk there?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
The part of the broad, all the great sidewalks and the landscaping is that it does provide a great walking environment, and we hope that happens. We would encourage that. And Atria, as an operator, has really very great protocols to address how their residents, lives go. So I'm sure they would encourage walking and using the promenade.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Culpepper.
Thank you.
All right. Mr.
I
Chairman,
propose to terminate applicant testimony at this point in time, given the hour.
why? Well, because I know, Mr. Chairman, if you could hear me out, you've already sort of forecasted that you're not going to be amenable to a special meeting. And last time we went till 10:30, and I've got my best guy still to go. Mr. Carmen's going to tell us about all the trees and plantings, and
We'll hear him at the next hearing.
I mean, we could get.
Well, then you better be sworn.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? So sworn
Would you please wait till you get to the microphone, sir?
They can hear me. Ronald Liddell, Ladell, Senior Vice President, Avalon Bay Communities, Inc. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I didn't cause the hurricane. I don't decide whether you put on Zoom or not. If you were on Zoom, we wouldn't have had to cancel that meeting during the hurricane. This is a redevelopment zone, part of an affordable housing settlement. We're supposed to be given consideration for special meetings and expedited meetings. Originally, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Surtees, this vote was supposed to occur last week. We disagreed for a while with your planning board attorney about whether the notice was adequate for a meeting that your attorney would not let us hold last week. And we assented to that. The way it's looking right now, and in full disclosure, I've been a planning board attorney, a member of the Board of Adjustment. I've been doing land use matters for 30 years. I have some experience. And I want the public, so people behind me don't think I'm trying to cut them short, to have the opportunity to question the witnesses. And respectfully, people on YouTube are not allowed to submit commentary for questions. They must come here and testify. That's under the municipal land use law. But I want them to have that opportunity to do so. And I asked for a special meeting. It was denied through Mr. Surtees' office. I've reached out to the mayor and have conversations. He deferred to the planning board, as he should, even though he's the mayor and a member of the planning board. We are now waiting till October 6th, I believe, and we're not going to finish because your professionals have questions, I'm sure, and people in the audience have questions, I'm sure. And there is an objector, by the way, that needs to be heard, and we want to give that opportunity. I don't think we're going to finish this application in October at the rate that we're going, and that's just not acceptable. We're not going to extend our time period on the MLUL, and we're going to force the planning board to make a decision. This application, you can speak when I'm done. This application is 100% conforming with one parking stripe waiver. This project has been redevelopment planned for over 15 years. We are the third developer in for this. We are providing, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number, but 100 something, how many affordable units total?
49.
149 affordable units. Without us, you don't settle. We are unable to wait, based on my predictions, to finish this meeting. The planning board has 11 members, yet we can barely get a quorum to show up at these meetings. I am not accusing anyone who feels unsafe because of COVID that they should do anything that they feel uncomfortable about. But this planning board has decided to operate the way they operate. I have no jurisdiction or commentary on that. And very respectfully, we need a special meeting. This planning board has a policy of ending now at 9:42 or 10 o'clock. Doesn't matter. When I was a planning board attorney in my town, and it's Livingston, we went to 1 in the morning for applications that deserve that type of response. We started at 7:30, full disclosure. You can do whatever you want, or all of you can do whatever you want, not just the chair's prerogative. But we need a special meeting. We need to get this application done meeting. We need hearings to finish it. You can vote any way you want. You can deny whatever you want, but we need to get this done. And I've had this conversation with Mr. Surtees, had the conversation with Mayor Marate, and I'm having the conversation now with the planning board in public. So we're not going to finish next week, and I don't know what's going to happen after that, and we're not able to wait. So you can decide and respond. I'm certainly interested in hearing it, but based on your response, I will advise my attorney to not extend the time period on the MLUL and give this planning board much more time to reach a decision. Thank you.
What is the current MLUL date?
Sam? Current date is October 6th, correct?
Yeah, look, we have worked with you very hard. We have met with you as many times as you want. Sam has worked with you very much. The problem with defective notice was not our doing. We didn't do it. You disagree with Jerry, but that's your prerogative. But I have to go with my lawyer because he's my lawyer. He's representing me. Otherwise, we didn't have to repeat this meeting. I mean, we could have been done 2/3, right? So it's not just the township's fault. And these planning board members have been working very hard. I mean, our planning board has been meeting in person, has met more times than probably most townships in New Jersey. And they know that the 5th Wednesday is free and they need some time with their family. And I can't ask them to give up that time with the family. And if there was a hope of application, Gene has extended meetings well past 11 or 12. But it's not like if we stay till 1, we are going to finish this today. It's unlikely.
No.
So that's why we will go to 6, see how it happens. So it's not just one-sided that we did something. Otherwise, we would be 2/3 done.
Mr. Mayor, in response to that, and respectfully, I understand we've arrived for the first time back in August, but appreciate from our perspective, we've been through 4 technical review committees on this application. We've, as an applicant, have worked very hard to get a project before you that is fully conforming. That didn't happen without us taking comments from your professionals, revising again. So when we get here, we come here with that perspective of being through every iteration of your ordinance, going through multiple reviews so that when we get here, we can present to you a clean package. So it doesn't just start in August for us. We've been at this for a better part of a year. And with respect to being able to get done on October 6th, it doesn't help if we're stopping meetings early. I mean, we want to get through as much as we can so that we can get this over with. And
I fully understand, and let the record show that we have worked with you too when COVID hit and the plans drastically changed. And Allison knows that the original plan looked very different. She was looking forward to drinking on the top of the restaurant. That's not going to happen. We worked with you. We understand the situation change. We work with you. This is the application whose ordinance has been voted by far the most often in the history of West Windsor in 225 years. I can tell you that. I mean, this was changed many times. And every time we worked with you to get it to a point where you were satisfied and we were satisfied. So we have done everything in our power to work with you because Mayor Shea had this vision. He started this project way back in 2007. So we have worked with you through changing situations, through whatever happened. I mean, I don't want to rehash everything that happened, but you know as well how many times this ordinance has been voted on by the Township Council and various councils, and they have always unanimously approved it through all changes, through all councils.
Well, Mayor, that's the point. The governing body is not who I'm referring to tonight. The governing body has done an amazing job, including former members of the governing body. Everything you said is 100% correct. My focus is on the planning board.
No, planning board it's not planning board's fault that the notice was not given properly. It's
Mayor,
none of
I'm
these
aware of
faults.
that, but Mayor, I don't want to look back because if the planning board had gone to Zoom, we wouldn't have had to cancel the meeting on
No,
Hurricane
that's
Ida.
not our policy. We have never
I
met
know
on
that. So
Zoom.
I don't want to look back. I want to look forward.
No, but that is our policy. We have never met on Zoom. And
I know that.
Yeah.
I don't want to look backward. I'm not asking you to meet on Zoom now.
These-
I want to look forward.
these-
Right now, it's September 22nd.
These big exhibits do not make justice on a 14-inch screen.
Mayor, there's 10 people on YouTube. That's all that came tonight on YouTube, just so we understand the level of interest here. I'm happy to talk to and present to any member of the public that has questions, et cetera.
No,
That's not the issue tonight. The
It
issue
is
tonight is,
not for the public, it's for the members too.
well, it's both. I
Yeah,
agree with you.
It's for the members too. It's not, I mean, it's not fair for them to look at, I mean, even from here, that big plan, I need a magnifying glass from Gene to look at these big plans right in front of me, 6 inches from my eyes, right? I mean, how are you going to do justification on a 14-inch laptop screen?
Mayor, I'm already saying, I'm not asking for a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward. Tonight is September 22nd. This application, the way we're heading, will not finish in October unless we have a special meeting. I am trying to find a way to avoid that.
Look, we have set October 6th and October 13th in our calendar. We will go to October 6th and 13th, and then we will see. If we need, we will talk about at that point. But at this point, it's not fair for me to ask the planning board members to give up a Wednesday that was known to them since the beginning of the year. This is one of the very few months when we have 5 Wednesdays in a month, right? And you can go back and look at our calendar. This is the board that has met the most, and to the credit of most of them, they have come in public, in person, most of the time. We have had maybe 2 Zoom meetings, that's it, when there was no application. So,
Perfunctory meetings. I
yeah,
understand.
so, I mean, we will go October 6th and see how it turns out.
But Mr. Hoff's point is still well noted. Mr. Carmen has been here twice, been here the whole night. Mr. O'Brien just walked in. We have 2 witnesses that are here. Now I've spent 10 minutes talking. I haven't looked at my phone. We're probably close to 10 o'clock.
We
could have, I'm not surprised. And I'm not going to suggest that you change your policy just for us. But Mr. Hoff is correct. We have multiple witnesses to go. There's an objector, and there's the public, and there's the town professionals, notwithstanding 4 TRC meetings that we've had. We're not going to finish on October 13th. So rather than surprise the planning board members, and rather than surprise the public, why don't we right now pull out our respective phones and figure out how we're going to finish this application before November, before Election Day, as
Ron.
one reference point.
Ron,
Let me talk to
October
the
20th
chairman.
has also been designated, is being held, pending if we don't get finished on the 13th.
So thank you. Can I just ask one follow-up question regarding that? Would it be accurate to say that on October 6th, October 13th, and October 20th, there's no other applications currently on those agendas except
Correct.
ours?
Correct.
Okay.
And in order to recognize your, I'll call it frustration with our not being able to meet next week, I will ask staff to defer review of any minutes and any non-crucial resolutions of memorialization so that the only thing that we're talking about is your business. And I have no problem staying past 10 o'clock if we're in the midst of a particular.
I knew if we were in the middle, you would certainly let that finish, as you did last time. I understand that.
But given that we'd be starting fresh, and you can see that we're just very curious folks who have questions or comments, I would call it being conscientious, but nevertheless, I think at this point in time, it's prudent for us to conclude tonight's discussion and commit to doing the very best we can to give you a decision no later than October 20th. And I'm asking my colleagues on the board to realize we may spend all of the next 3 meetings going past 10 to a reasonable time. but no later than 11.
Okay, and then, thank you for that response. I didn't know it, and I appreciate the information. As far as I know, Mr. Huff will correct me in a second, we have 3 witnesses that still have to appear?
That's
Traffic,
correct.
Carmen, O'Brien, Ken?
That's correct.
Landscaping, your apartments, and
Traffic. Okay, so I'm hoping that October 6th, because I know Mr. O'Brien, our architect, will do a redo pretty quickly. You've heard what he's going to testify. Mr. Huff indicated Mr. Carmen's representing landscape architecture for the entire project, and I know people are interested in the promenade and things like that. And clearly traffic, as you or your staff has pointed out, has some concerns, and we're happy to get that. I clearly believe that all 3 will be able to finish direct testimony on October 6th, just to set up the stage, also for the public to plan ahead.
Right.
'Cause I'm sure people have certain questions about certain topics. So hopefully we can do that and then still have time after to start dealing with professionals and
our staff
and your staff and some members of the public too.
There are some items in our staff's reports that do need to be discussed, at least from my standpoint. I went through them and marked quite a few. But again, once we're rolling, we should be able to keep this thing going. We have positive inertia.
I like that. Mr. Huff, you've extended till tonight. Is that correct on the MLU?
October 6th, I believe, correct, Sam?
Okay, so since we're going to, well, I don't want to avoid a problem that if, God forbid, there's another Hurricane Ida 2 on the 6th, Mr. Muller's already indicated that without further notice, so I know we're good with regard to that for the 6th and the 13th. I don't mind, Mr. Hoff, if you want to extend on the record till October 13th, because I'm convinced we will not finish on the 6th. And that way we can just avoid any issues that might come up by the public not hearing it and the record not reflecting it as such.
I mean, we'll extend to October 13th. That's, their statutory deadline's extended, but I share your sentiment. We're unlikely to finish on the 6th, but if a miracle does occur and the application can come to a vote, we intend to conclude when we're done. We're not.
I'm willing to take people out to a diner late at night if we want to stay really late. Never mind. Thank you for your
You know
consideration.
better than that.
I'm ready to make the offer. Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
And let me say something again about notice. What we said earlier was we're carrying it to the 6th. I said at the 6th, we'll carry it to the 13th, but let's treat tonight the announcement by the chair of the 6th and the 13th as public notice that we will have hearings on those 2 nights.
Well, I'm committing that if we don't finish on the 13th, we'll be prepared to entertain this application on the 20th. It'll be up to the applicant whether it wants to grant an extension of the
And
MLU.
that's fine, and let's treat that announcement as the notice to the public as to the meetings that this is being carried to.
And Mr. Muller, if I could just clarify that, if for some reason, be it a hurricane, tornado, or otherwise, that this board were to not meet on October 6th, it's fair for the public to now assume this application will continue on the 13th with no further notice.
Absolutely. Got it.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Having said all those words and thanking the public for their participation in observing and listening, and folks who are on YouTube, whether it's 10 or 100, we appreciate your interest. And so without any further business this evening, I will adjourn this meeting at 9:57.
See, it's when Ron gets hot, that's when the tornado comes. So he needs to cool down.